past all of them as well. What a move from the 48. Oh, look at this, and onto the straight they come.
Brilliant move there from the number 40 to make it through. That left-hander sliding up the inside, going up now over Hawthorne Hill, down Pilgrim's Drop, and it's brilliant stuff here at Brands Hatch.
Hello everybody and welcome to the only round outside the UK in the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge here on iRacing. We're going to reach the halfway point of our season here this afternoon at Spa as our 5-race season gets towards its exciting point. In the first 2 rounds we've had championships that are now tied after a couple of rounds. We've got championships that have, or classes rather, that have seen the same result twice. But we've still got a long way to go and a lot of excitement still to come here at Spa. Another hour and a half coming up for you live here on RaceSpotTV with myself, Ian O'Leary, and Darragh Thacker alongside me for this round of the championship. It is, as I say, the only round outside of the UK as so far we've taken on Donington Park and Snetterton where we were just 2 weeks ago and then in 1 week's time and the week after that we'll be ending our season again as well at Silverstone and Brands Hatch with the UK rounds once again. Good to be back, Darragh, with this championship. Still 3 rounds to go, a long way to go as well, but one of the most interesting rounds, I think, upcoming here. The only outside of the UK to take us at the halfway point of tonight to the halfway point in the season.
Yeah, and I think after Donington and Snetterton, we've had 2 tracks where it's difficult to really negotiate with the GT4 and GT3 traffic. Spa a little bit wider, you know, a lot more time spent at full throttle. It's going to be interesting to see how drivers can cope. And, you know, after a week away, they've had an extra week to almost prepare for this race. So I think a lot of importance is going to be held by the drivers on this 3rd round of the season.
And you can see the prizes, by the way, that they're all fighting for this season. Top 3 drivers in all classes getting 2 general admission tickets to a 2025 British GT round, and the winner from each class, a SimMagic GT Neo wheel rim and Base Performance Simulator GT Simulator session as well. That's for the winning driver in each of the classes, and for a random driver who's competed all the rounds, a SimMagic Alpha Mini wheelbase. That, by the way, could be in a random draw of quite a lot of people at the moment. We've got quite a lot of drivers who have been here at both of the rounds so far. In rounds so far, as I mentioned, we've got championships that are tied after the opening round and some that have been the same in terms of results from round 1 to round 2. So let's have a look at those now. GT3 Pro is neither of those actually. Well, I suppose it has the same first and second. Adam Watson and Ben Cooper have finished 1 and 2 so far in both rounds. Andrew Pike 3rd in the championship now, with Matt Cheverton and Rachel Conkley tied for 4th. Mike Barber's just outside that top 5 with Aidan Carter next. Had a Pedro Silva and James King. Gareth Higgins didn't start either of the races so far as our records go. Francis Sikorsky is leading the way in the GT3 AM standings by 7 points ahead of Oliver Ettridge, with Ricky Pittman in 3rd. Nathan Anstis and Gianluca Elia round out the top 5, with Ben Bayworth, Nick ST and Louis Hesketh, Andy Chow and Zeb Murray rounding out the top 10 there. Those are all drivers, by the way, who've been at all rounds so far. In GT4 Pro, Kieran Sharp has been able to win both of the rounds so far, and Daniel Thomas, who's finished 2nd in both rounds so far. Christian Menezes is in 3rd place ahead of Brandon Loden, with Ryan Moles next. Then this smallest of the classes with those who have not been at rounds so far in Patrick Rich and Ned Wharton. Then the GT4 AMs, Joe Coffin and Joshua Begembe, the only drivers to have had good rounds, I would say, so far, with a 1st and a 2nd for the both of them in the first 2 rounds. Obviously on different rounds for both. Then David Brown in 3rd place ahead of Ethan Moran and Matty Wild rounding out the top 5. Amy Grimm is next ahead of Luca Monroe, Jordy Mackay, Ashley Toft and Carl Chase rounding out the top 10 there. Those are all drivers with the exception of Carl Chase, who have been at all rounds so far this season. In fact, there's 11 drivers in GT4 AM who have been at both rounds so far this season. And I'm glad to say that we've got well over 30 here again tonight at Spa, which is fantastic to have. We're just into qualifying at the moment. With 5.5 minutes to go, we've still got just over half the session to go, and plenty of time for lap time still to come in for all of these drivers. They get 3 laps, but with 10 minutes the limitation, they're actually going to struggle to get all of them in. Sikorsky goes over the line first there as a GT3 AM, and he will just about get his laps in, but these GT4s are really going to struggle to get their laps in, their 3 laps in over the course of the 10 minutes. Aidan Carter set the benchmark currently to 17.2, just ahead of Sikorsky, who we have seen put in decent qualifying performances in the past, and he's mixing it up again with the GT3 Pros.
Yeah, interesting to see really what this qualifying will give us in terms of a grid. We've seen those standings with some drivers being slightly dominant towards the start of the season, but if they can carry that over that halfway point in the season, it's going to benefit them so much in the final 2 weeks, give them a little bit more breathing room as they go in towards the final 2 rounds at Silverstone and, of course, at Brands Hatch. Drivers that haven't set a lap time yet are under pressure somewhat, though. Mike Barber is one of those in the number 4 GT3 Pro, so does the company afford to not set a lap time here because they expect themselves to be right up towards probably at least the top 15 in this session.
Absolutely. It's going to be, I still think, a pretty important session for qualifying. Maybe one of the least important of the season, in fairness, but still relative importance put on it as Mike Barber now makes his way out of no-name corner on the run down in towards the fast left-hander. At the moment, he is, well, it's shown on my time screen, he's not actually on the circuit, but that's clearly not true, because he's right here in front of our eyes at the moment, just going in towards the campus chicane now, turns 13 and 14. As the time ticks down. Track temperature, by the way, pretty low, so going to be able to push on quite nicely here. Barber just nearly getting into the gravel on the outside line, now trying to hook it in time for Stavolo, and now run over the curb on the outside line and through the left-hander at the curve pull Frere. A little bit on edge there in terms of oversteer, but he gets out the corner nicely. And then for the run up the hill here, but this is where the Porsche is going to suffer a little bit. Straight line speed, not its forte. This is where you need it, and I would say this is a track actually where you need it. Unfortunately, the Porsche hasn't got that straight line speed that I would say it needs.
Yeah, it's a circuit, I mentioned it's such an importance on that full throttle. So much of the lap is spent with your foot flat to the floor, even in these GT cars that don't necessarily have the downforce on some of the fastest machines on the planet, but still have more than enough to keep you having to be hammering that throttle for most of the lap. Barber has done a good job of that, jumps himself up onto the second row provisionally, but immediately replaced by Rachel Concleves. It's a good lap time to put herself up in the top 4 as well. So time's dropping and changing, but only really one more lap for the drivers to improve from here on out.
Yeah, it is really. It's certainly going to be for Georgie Mackay as well. After this lap, just one more for the GT4 AM driver. Currently in the session, by the way, we have got about 40. I said it's just over 30. I was actually looking at an outdated practice timing sheet from earlier on. There was 30 quite early on in practice. Now there's 40 of them, but luckily this track does have the length and indeed the wideness as well in places to deal with it. Through Piff Paff again for Mackay. Not running quite as far out wide in towards the gravel, but you can't really afford to do so. You find yourself in the gravel if you're not too careful. Now through the left-hander, I would ignore the first sector time and just focus on the time when it comes across over the line, out of the curve pull Frere, and then on the run up the hill. The McLaren GT4 is going to benefit a little bit more through this section. Just have that old-fashioned McLaren GT3 DNA a little bit, this GT4 car, in terms of what it's got in straight line speed. It's not bad through here. That's a little bit wide though. You've got to be careful of the off tracks around here, even if they aren't as fierce as it once was in terms of off tracks around this circuit. It is still a talking point as Mackay now drives out of this final corner, gets the drive up towards the line. Not really going to get much of a clue as to what the time's going to be with that ticker on the bottom of the screen, but we will now get it. It's 4th place in GT4 AM so far. The best GT4 time, by the way, currently set by Kieran Sharp by 12 thousandths of a second. That's a continuation of the dominance he's shown so far this season.
Yeah, let's see if Joshua Bigembe can almost follow on in that kind of dominant fashion. Wasn't quite able to replicate the fantastic results that he had in the opening round at round 2. He finished second at Snetterton, which means he's tied on points with Joe Coffin, but no lap time on the board and only 55 seconds or less than that left in the session, so he's got to get it done now. And I think the worry for him would be if he starts too far back from his championship rivals, then he won't get himself involved. So clearly not all easy sailing for all of our GT4 class leaders.
Not for the moment. Bigembe needing a lap time here, though. Big lap time. He's currently tied on points with Joe Coffin at the front of the standings, and he's gone to pole at the moment, by the way, in GT4 AM. He's setting the benchmark with a 2-minute 28.5. It's good enough for 6th in GT4 overall, by the way, as Bigembe now makes his way on the brakes into the final corner, massively over that inside curve. That's not going to be particularly helpful, but it's the second one you're particularly worried about for your short run up towards the line. The timing has just frozen slightly, but we'll get the time as it comes in. It's going to be close, that's for sure, and it's third place. Not that far away, actually, from Joe Coffin, but it is only third place. In fact, off of his class pole sitter, I think that's only half a second, so not bad from Bigembe, but not quite up there with Coffin's best lap time of the day. So 1 minute or 1 hour and a half put on the clock, rather, ready for this race, the third round of the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge here on iRacing. And the grid will be coming up shortly because the drivers are getting themselves onto the grid that is formed up, of course, as always, just before Blanchimont round this circuit out of the curve pool threat. After this qualifying session, no warm-up in this series, only the race to come, and we'll see that starting grid in a few moments' time and get the full run-through as to where everybody is. As I mentioned earlier, 40 drivers in the field here today. Aidan Carter is the first of them in GT3 Pro, with Adam Watson only a 10th behind. A good battle incoming between those two, I would say, today. Spa-Francorchamps has taken the pole in GT3 AM with a great lap time ahead of GT3 Pro driver Rachel Conkley. Then it's Mike Barber, then Oliver Ettridge, who's second in GT3 AM. It's Pedro Silva, 7th, ahead of Nathan Anstis, with John Earl and Matt Cheverton rounding out the top 10. Jake Pitt and Andrew Pike share row 6. These guys, by the way, already over a second off pole. Gianluca Elia and Ben Cooper are next, to Ben Benioff and Ricky Pittman. It's Louis Hesketh and Andy Chell sharing row 9 and rounding out top 20. Nick Scott Dickerson and Zed Murray. Christian Menezes is on pole in the GT4 Pro to Kieran Shaw. A bit of a surprise there. Daniel Thomas next to Joe Coffin, who I think did improve actually towards the end. He's 4th now in overall GT4 land. Ned Wharton and Ryan Moles are next. Wharton making his first appearance of the season, by the way. Ethan Morone is next to Joshua Bigembe, who we saw up towards the line late on there. Luca Monroe and Georgie Mackay round out the top 30. Brandon Loden next to David Brown, with Matty Wild and Craig Hewitt on row 17, and of Amy Grimm and Sean McCardle. James Magasgale, Dylan Mystery and Carl Chase and Ashley Toft round out the field. Chase and Toft not setting lap times to round out the field here today. 23 degrees out on the track temperature. Again, it is pretty cold, to be honest, for May, but it is only just past 10 o'clock in the morning. The pace car pulls off to a start, and Aidan Carter and Adam Watson follow the BMW pace car in what I think actually is going to be one of the better races this season between those two. It's been Watson dominating so far, really, especially at Donington Park. He was untouched. I think he's going to get a challenge this time round, though. He's not taken pole for a start.
Yeah, Nathan Carter, a driver that is absolutely one to watch, not just in this race, but over the course of the championship. Difficult start in the opening round with Donington Park meant that they were down the order from where I think they would have wanted to be, but right at the front of the field here at Spa, even if there is a little bit of blinking, as they run up towards the final couple of corners, opportunity is right there. And the question is, can anybody almost get themselves involved in that front battle, or will we start to see a little bit of that dominance come back for Adam Watson? I think it's going to be interesting to see how the AMs mix in with this as well.
Through the final corners, and the third round of the Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge set to get underway here for the first time and only time outside of the UK this time round. The guys are going to stay at 2 pace car speed as they make their way over the start-finish line. Well, I guess you can't call it start-finish line, but yeah, I mean the Grand Prix start-finish line on this circuit. They'll make their way out of La Source, and then for the traditional sort of Spa 24-hour start line, if you like, on the way down in towards Eau Rouge. And they pass the very extraordinarily long pit lane that they'll be having to traverse at some point over the course of the 90 minutes. And now they will be in control of their own destiny. Aidan Carter certainly will anyway, as he's taken pole for this race. He'll be setting this field off in towards turn number 1 and Eau Rouge for the very first time. Green flag waves here at Spa, and it's a very good reaction from Adam Watson there, who's immediately alongside him here. Side by side at Eau Rouge for the very first time, between first and second. They lean on each other up the hill for the first time, but Watson gets into the front. Now, will that Porsche be able to hang on with an onslaught from Corvette and Ferrari and Audi just in behind here? Look at this, too wide already. Sikorsky looking to get alongside Carter, but Carter shuts the door before he gets there. Carter on the outside line in towards, oh, he's gone wide. Watson goes wide in towards Lecombe, and so Carter gets back down the inside in front time of Malmedy. As someone's off in the background, Aidan Carter takes the lead, and he's chased all the way across to the inside of this corner, in towards Bruxelles. Adam Watson not giving it up just yet. Outside line for the long looping hairpin through the right-hander. He can't go through, and Aidan Carter takes the lead of this race in a hard-fought battle through the opening sector.
Yeah, Sikorsky not really wanting to get involved because he's leading the AM class, doesn't really want to get himself, into trouble as the two leaders fight between themselves. GT4's decided one as well, dipping a couple, actually all 4 dives into the gravel. I think that was Christian Menny's leading the GT4 pros as they run their way down in towards Pouon for the very first time. Difficult as they duck and dive their way through in the double left-hander. Really, not really a place for overtaking, but easy to lose a lot of time, easy to lose the rear end, it seems.
And that's not the first time we've seen it on this opening lap, unfortunately. Car backing itself into the wall through Pouon. Ben Cooper, who doesn't realise he's lost his rear wing yet, and I think, oh, and there's contact in front of him. One of the DCW Porsches making contact there with a Mercedes that's off into the gravel. Oh dear, that might be Amy Grimm. Yes, it is indeed. That Mercedes picking itself out of the gravel. Matty Wild looks like possibly the Porsche Cayman driver just up in front. We'll get some word on who's got off on this opening up, because I can see Ryan Moles and James Smagerscale already on pit lane, by the way. We saw a spin in the background of the GT Freeze through Lecombe to start with as well, so we'll get word as to what's happened on that opening lap later on. Meanwhile, side by side for the lead in GT4 AM between Joshua Bigembe and Joe Coffin. Those two tied on championship points after just 2 rounds. They've traded first and second finishes, and Joe Coffin's under a lot more pressure at the end of this opening lap than I imagine he was hoping for.
Yeah, Bigembe not going to go for the inside move that we're seeing from a couple of drivers behind, but clearly this GT4 AM battle is going to go the distance in terms of the season, not just in this race, because a win apiece, a second apiece as well, and first and second once again in this race shows that they are really tussling it out between themselves. Watson can't get the right line on Aidan Carter as they make their way in towards Lecombe for the second time in this race, but it's difficult to really go for it too early on. 87 minutes still remaining, a lot of time, and at this track a lot of opportunity that is still going to be left for these drivers before and after the pit stop phase.
That's what happened to Ryan Moles through Rouge, dear me. Rouge, sorry, the first time round. That's how Ben Cooper got spun around initially. So that was going on the inside. I thought I saw someone spin to the outside through the second part of Lecombe as well. Maybe I did. This is Matt Cheverton. Ooh, that might have been contact. It was quite close to a McLaren, but it might not have been. He went around quite naturally in that Mustang. And that's James Smagerscale, who was, hit by one of the BMWs and then hit the wall on the outside line as well. That's how he went into the pit lane at the end of the opening lap. He did not recover from that position. Now, did he come across on the BMW? I would say the answer to that is yes, looking at that replay.
Yes, and Smagerscale spinning into the wall, all manner of smoke, and that rear wing not necessarily attached to the car in the way that he'd want it to be. Ben Cooper trying to hold it through Pouon, loses the rear once again. Luckily doesn't hit the barrier for a second time, but realistically, with the rear wing gone, the damage was already done for him. And the mystery on the entry to Pouon is where he really lost it and spun perfectly on the racing line.
He just rolls off, and thankfully no one onside. That's contact between Amy Grimm and Matty Wild. Looking like a bit of a racing deal, that one to me. 2 drivers fighting for every inch going into the pit path chicane. Just side-to-side contact. Maybe Grimm coming up into the side of the Cayman of Matty Wild, but I'm not sure. Difficult one to call. I'm sure the stewards will have a look over, as always, as the GT4s, the leaders anyway, make their way in towards the final chicane. Again, this is Christian Menzies, followed by Daniel Thomas, Kieran Sharp and Ned Wharton, rounding out the GT4 Pro field. As I mentioned before, Ned Wharton has not started a race this season, but now is up towards the front immediately. And further in the background, by the way, there's side-by-side going on. That looks like Mackay versus Munro in towards turn one. It was, yeah, the McLaren being driven by Georgie Mackay down the inside of Luca Munro in the red Mercedes. Side-by-side through Eau Rouge could be tricky. And it looks like Munro's going to back out. Is he? Well, no. Well, sort of. He eventually tucks into line up the hill, but that doesn't stop Mackay from going over the tarmac through Radion anyway. And now Munro's going to get the slipstream, maybe, or has he got to slow down? Maybe the latter, as behind him, David Brown tries to take advantage. No, he looks fine, Munro. He does have to defend, though, from David Brown on the outside line in towards Lecombe. Can't do it there either. Plenty of racing going on in the midfield of GT4, perhaps even more than what's going on in GT3 at the moment, where Aidan Carter has pulled out a 2.5 lead.
Yeah, really impressive to see Carter leading by that much, especially with Watson's dominance that we've seen in the first couple of races this season. But the 42 going along very nicely indeed. Side-by-side in towards No Name Corner. Oh, it gets a little bit tricky through there. It pinches on the exit. The 37 drifting out wider than I think they'd really want to be doing so. But the run down in towards Pouon, I think it's going to be just these four going line of stern. Nearly a move to the inside at Pouon. Always a dangerous place to really go for a lunge, but they are going to keep going in the order that they are, and Georgie Mackay not quite going for the move on Luca Munro, but I think it's fair to say David Brown may have a go in towards Piff Path, but may have to just stick behind, as the outside line is never really a useful one to the first part of the chicane.
Yeah, this could be a problem now. As soon as you start to look over your shoulder and start driving, defending a bit here, then there could be big trouble, and that will allow Luca Munro to get away. David Brown just in behind, then Craig Hewlett, by the way, is the next driver in line. Matt Cheverton's regaining some of those places in GT3, just past Andy Chell for 15th overall. He's still 6th in GT3 Pro, but nevertheless, he is gaining overall position. And by the way, Aidan Carter is now the leader ahead of Franek Sikorski in the overall standings. So the pro leader is followed by the AM leader now in the overall standings, and it's not that close compared to what we saw earlier on. Watson now in third place in the Porsche. Then you've got Oliver Etridge, who's second in GT3 AM. In fact, it goes pro, AM, then pro, and then AM again in the top of the GT3 standings. But this is the dream start really for Carter. That was pretty close to contact down up in towards Lecombe. Oh, and there's contact. There was always going to be there, wasn't there? There was always going to be contact, and Ben Pennyworth, the one who's gone around in number 63. He's on the racing line, doesn't know whether to go forwards or backwards. Eventually he does go forwards. That though looked like teammates making contact in towards Lecombe.
Yeah, absolutely. It wasn't really the ideal moment. I think Benny Pennyworth is going to be unhappy with how things have gone for him. He's now in a bit of no man's land. His teammate far and away ahead now. Pennyworth will have a lot of work to do, and yeah, he's got 82 minutes to do so, but yeah, teammate going too deep into the corner. Pennyworth left more than enough room on the outside line. I don't really think he could lack more room if he tried. There's two more of his teammates have to divert behind him. Not really ideal for Pennyworth. He's now going to be fourth out of the 4 cars in the team, but the pace that he's shown so far on this race, he'll have a little bit of confidence to try and come back through, especially if we're seeing some of the battling like we're seeing here. I mean, close trains, a couple of sends, it means that drivers are losing, handfuls of time to each other. And it really is starting to be not necessarily procession, but a really difficult race to judge in terms of how do you play some of these trains in the early stages.
And this is the largest group in the circuit, really, especially for a lead-in class. This is Christian Menezes at the front of the field ahead of Daniel Thomas, who's in the second of the Mercedes. Then it's Kieran Sharp, who's won already twice this season, Ned Wharton, and then Joe Coffin, who's actually got onto the back of these guys as the GT4 AM leader, and is really benefiting from it. We noted over the line at the end of the first lap that Bugembe was side by side with him. Well, he's been able to put Bugembe behind him now, and he's off out front on his own. Joe Coffin. It's currently running in the lead of GT4 AM. So 5 for the lead, but are they going to race each other at this stage? are they going to stay single file, knowing that later on is when it's going to get really interesting, because the pit stops will have already been and gone, and that the fuel they will have saved, they will have benefited from it. We could get a good indication in towards Lecom this time, just about how they're going to race each other and how they're going to play this, because at the moment it looks like they're pretty happy to sit in a row of 5.
Yeah, and I think for the time being, that's not necessarily a bad strategy, is it? Early stages of the race, only 10 minutes have passed, and being able to sit and almost work together in the train, get away from some of the rest in the class, although in the GT4 Pros, you know, there isn't a great deal, only 6 cars in the entire class, and the front 5 are pretty much here, with Brown and Logan just a little bit further back in the next train. But for the likes of Coffin as well in this train, just being able to work together means that it can benefit all of them as we get in towards the latter stages of the race. Clearly, the pace differential isn't huge, it isn't going to be monumental, and it means that we're likely to see this kind of battling right towards the end of the race as Kieran Sharp inherits P2. Not really a move to be defended, it seems, from Daniel Thomas. He wasn't really going to be prepared to fight that one hard, it seems.
Not particularly. As we go aboard with Neb Wharton in number 68. Impressive for a debutant this season, by the way, to be running like this, up with the big guns at the front of the field. Completely from a standing start. He has got himself into 4th place and right in the mix here with all the others. John Earl is coming up to the back of these guys, by the way, in one of the GT3s at the moment, so we are going to get some traffic before the traffic, if you like, with John Earl and actually Ben Cooper as well coming through the field. They've both pitted, and there goes Earl in the BMW through on Wharton, just about getting through as cleanly as possible here, and for Jono getting to the finish, seeing what positions he can pick up. But this is really the start of the traffic, which is not going to be that far away, and it's going to be pretty constant as well because of the start we've had, and the GT4s and GT3s being strewn across quite a big portion of this track already. Just because of lap 1, we are going to see quite a lot of traffic, not necessarily in clumps like you sometimes see, but actually just pretty steadily 1s and 2s throughout the race. You're going to see quite a lot of traffic, although Jono will be clear now for quite some time.
Yeah, I think generally compared to what we'll see throughout the rest of the season, traffic will be lighter, but I think the other consideration to make is where you can meet the traffic can make such a big difference to how you're able to run through. If you can meet if you're a GT3 meeting GT4s on the Kemmel Straight, you know, absolutely fantastic, exactly what you need. You can get through on 4 or 5 just by going full throttle because the GT4s don't quite have that horsepower. If you find them though, as you're coming into the bus stop chicane, maybe through Blanchimont, difficult to judge how much speed they can take through. Maybe in towards Lake Com and Malmedy, tricky sets of corners, you may be losing so much time compared to your rivals, and we could see trains split apart because of that, and so traffic management is going to be key. But I think it is fair to say that it'll be less key than what we like to see throughout the rest of the season. I mean, Silverstone, probably the British track that will also have less of an importance on that traffic management, with it being the wider, faster circuit. But by the time we get to Brands Hatch, the drivers are going to have to be nailed back into that routine again.
Yeah, it's hard to overstate really what an outlier Brands Hatch is in these final 3 rounds, to be honest. It's much more likely to be paired with the other more, I would say, traditional British circuits like Donington Park and Snetterton. That makes it sound like I'm saying Silverstone's not a traditional British circuit, which of course it is, but you get what I mean. It's a very different circuit to Silverstone in so many ways. As we briefly had a look back down there the field in GT4, there was actually quite a group going on still with Luca Munro battling for 3rd in GT4 AM, and this is it with Georgie Mackay and David Brown just in behind, and that is just chasing behind. Craig Hewlett was previously involved. Ben Cooper has just gotten through on all of these guys, and he's up the field now. Will soon be clear of the GT4s. He's been into pit lane already, and don't forget, pit lane is a very, very long travel here at this circuit. 50 seconds to drive from one end to the other. You won't lose 50 seconds, but it will take you that long. So it's a very, very long journey indeed. Here goes David Brown around the outside of the first part of Piff Puff, not got the inside for the second, which is ideally what you need. That might have given Luca Munro the chance to run away. Yeah, Luca Munro going to take the opportunity with 2 hands, will he? Because a little bit of dust being kicked up as they run their way through towards the end of the second sector, up towards the final sector as well. Blanchimont to be negotiated, but
I mean, we are starting to see some of these gaps opening up just a little bit. The trains of 4 or 5 becoming a couple of duos. A send to the inside from Gianluca Elia. Not going to work out for him. Of course, he had heartbreak on the final lap back at Donington Park, just almost trying to recover some of those points still. Second place last time out at Setterton was good for him, but he wants more points as well. There's more battles go on, but we are seeing almost these duos of battles rather than trios or clubs of 4 or 5.
Well, that's Seb Murray hanging on from Ben Benioff, actually, but Benioff's got a very good run out of Malmedy, and will be firing down the inside in time for Bruxelles. Oh, close, very close to contact. But Benioff, don't forget, is coming back through the field, and so you'd expect him to win out in this battle against that Corvette of Seb Murray, and he does get up into the top 10 now in GT3 Pro, so that's a good place for Benioff to get to. Don't forget that in this series, the top 20 will score points in each class, so it doesn't really matter about getting into the points. Every driver who finishes enough laps here today is going to score the points, but obviously your position within that will matter quite a lot. 45 for a win here in this series, by the way, and just the 1 point for finishing in 20th place. Over the line again for Aidan Carter. Franek Sikorsky is a couple of seconds further behind, with Adam Watson right in behind him at the moment, but struggling to get through. This is a good start for Carter, very good start indeed, as they go on to yet another lap. Dylan Mystery is not that far in front of them at the moment and will be lapped pretty shortly, but will Watson even be in second place overall when they get there? Might well be, looking at the way he's shaping up at the moment.
Yeah, it could be an interesting move to see if they can make. That's a replay of Gianluca Elia. That's going to be a hard hit on the nose into the ball, right into the racing line as well. Not really where the number 6 will want to be, waiting for a moment to spin it back round. We'll see it again as he comes through Blanchimont, and whilst in the live shot, we have that move possibly on between Sikorsky and Adam Watson. Sikorsky, I've never seen a tight line to the inside. He's on the grass. Well, actually, he's heading through Adam Watson as Elia. We'll see his onboard there spinning around. But Watson now up into P2 overall. Sikorsky maybe just trying to save a little bit of fuel. We'll see.
I would say so. I would say it's pretty difficult for the Porsche to find its way through naturally there, so just lifting off there Sikorsky, letting Adam Watson through, and he gets on his way, does Watson, to try and chase down Carter. He did get a bit of a slingshot as well, actually, because he's just under 2 seconds behind Aidan Carter now, and that could all change very quickly with traffic as well. Just see in the background there, Rachel Conkley and Pedro Luis Silva going pretty close for third place in GT3 Pro as well, out of no-name corner, but Silva showing not many signs of actually making an overtake right now. You see that just in the background. Oliver Ettridge not far in front of them. He's second place in GT3, and that's who Franek Sikorsky is trying to stay away from as things stand. Sikorsky, the championship leader, ahead of Ettridge after Sikorsky's victory 2 weeks ago at the at the Snetterton round of this championship. Ettridge looking to at least stay on terms. This wouldn't be the worst. This is a decent place actually for Ettridge to find himself, because he's not finished in the top 2 yet this season, but he's going to want to chase down Sikorsky, and having his rival towed around by the overall series leader Adam Watson isn't going to help him in that cause.
No, I think that's fair to say. I think Ettridge, up and down season so far. A tricky race. It's heavier than last time out as John Earl goes for a bit of a lazy spin at the second part of Playcom. But for Ettridge, it's been a season so far of so close yet so far, I think it's fair to say. Looking to try and get himself back in towards some top running positions. 2 third places. I mean, it's not bad on paper, but I think in both races he would have wanted just that little bit more. Good run towards the end at Donington Park, of course, but he was leading the race, I believe, for a little while at Stellarton just a couple of weeks ago. So still a decent position to be in P2. Of course, he hasn't finished in the top 2 so far this season, but again, I think he'd like the chance to get after Franek Sikorsky, and at the moment, Sikorsky being tagged along by Watson really is benefiting the 46, and I think really it's clear to see that's why Sikorsky's decided just that getting out of the way, and even if he loses a little bit of time, saving the fuel could help him towards the end of the race. Strategy hurt him 2 weeks ago. He doesn't want that to happen again this time around when he's leading the race.
Yeah, last week, by the way, was the only week off in this series. 5 rounds crammed into 6 weeks here between the end of February and the start of April. We'll be live again, same time, same place, this time next week from Silverstone, as this battle for first in GT4 Pro gets a bit more lively with 20 minutes gone. Kieran Sharp has recently overtaken Daniel Thomas at the front end of the field, and now he's challenging for the lead here of the number 8 car. Christian Menezes in the front end of the field, and he'll hold on to that through the final chicane. But what about in towards Lecombe? It's always a much better chance at overtaking here at this circuit. And with 20 minutes gone, I get the feeling that Kieran Sharp does want to get this overtake made. He knows that GT3 traffic is not far away, and that could split this battle apart for good. If he starts that phase of the race in the lead, you are in a bit of an advantageous position compared to those behind who could get bad luck through traffic and lose touch with the group.
Yeah, and there's always a risk that you can lose touch with a group that realistically means you can't get back into contention for a race. So critical to stay in trains like this. And, you know, Christian Menezes just doing a good job to keep himself towards the front of the field. Kieran Sharp almost tracking him, though, up towards the end of the Kemmel straight. He's done it time and time again, but he's just sat there time and time again. Menezes is taking the brunt, really, in terms of how much fuel he's going to have to burn through. May have to take a little bit more when they get to the pit stop phase later on, and that could cost him. He could lead the entirety of the opening stint, but spending a little bit longer in pit lane could be what is his undoing. And Kieran Sharp knows that, and he's being relatively smart about how he's racing this, I think.
Well, 2 wins so far. It says a lot about the driver he is, the season he's having. And at the moment, he's, I would say, primed to replicate that, actually, even though he's not quite in that first place at the moment. Through the long left-hander at Pouron they go. Sharp keeping a slightly tighter line through compared to the Mercedes in front, but doesn't really matter going in towards fifth path, really. It's about staying close as much as you possibly can as they continue to extend their margin over the rest of the field. A couple of pit stops in GT3 to note, by the way, but for Matt Cheverton and Louis Hesketh. Not sure why they've decided to come in this early in the race. That might be a reason why. Didn't know that. Matt Cheverton is missing his front end, and that's unfortunately not the first incident that Mustang's had all day. Yeah,
a couple of moments. There's no doubt about that. Not exactly what you need to be having, particularly in the first third of this race, of which we are still in, as we look at what happened to Louis Hesketh. Just going wide, very wide at Blanchimont. Oh my goodness me.
No.
Oh my word.
Ouch.
Yeah.
That's a big impact. I think Cheverton thought he could just sort of power past there on the left-hand side, but Hesketh still was fighting with the car there, wrestling with it, and came spearing across the track, excuse me. Have a look at this. Cheverton saying to the left, he knows it's coming, but he thought he'd just get past in time. I must admit, in Cheverton's position there, the better position, of course, this is with hindsight, but the better position always in those situations, I think, is just to slow down rather than speed up. But Cheverton sped straight into the accident that time round, unfortunately, and Hesketh was always going to have a crash, but it unfortunately ended up being a two-car incident on that occasion. Here comes Kieran Sharp, by the way, on the way in towards Lecombe, and there's a good chance of him going through here if he wants to, but there's your answer. Doesn't want to. Lifts off in towards Lecombe, and that's another lap spent behind Christian Menezes, who's led the first 23 minutes of this race so far.
Yeah, looking relatively calm and collected in doing so. Not really made, well, in the first 23 minutes, that is, not made really many little moments or little mistakes, and has kept very calm and consistent throughout so far in his Mercedes. Well versed in that car. Of course, Kieran Sharp following in behind. I just see Kieran Sharp being able to sit, wait, benefit either towards the end of this stint by making a move and running away, or just having that shorter pit stop. He's going to be worried, of course, of Daniel Thomas and Ned Wharton, who are just in behind as they race along with Joe Coffin at the back of this train. But I don't really think Kieran Sharp is thinking about anybody but Christian Menezes right now and his own race, because I don't think he's worried about being overtaken on pace. He's shown the class in the opening couple of rounds to get himself into the championship position that he is in with fantastically strong opening couple of rounds. He just has to try and capitalise capitalise on that from here on out. This is the best place to do so. But he's in a championship position where he doesn't have to push for the lead right now. He can wait, and he can really manipulate the race to suit him rather than really pushing everybody into a more difficult position in terms of making them push harder to catch him up.
Well, there's no one with a huge advantage in this front five just for now, but you can just see that gap starting to appear between second and third, Sharp and Thomas. So again on the brakes again in time for the bus stop chicane. Can't help but notice the slight overcast conditions that have begun to crowd over this circuit. It's just got a little bit darker, but the track has never been very warm anyway. So just a pretty overcast day, although having said that, the track is heating up as we race on. 3 degrees higher than what we started with now, only half an hour ago. That is only going to increase, I suppose, as the end of the race hits us just about midday virtual standard time here in May, which is the in-sim date. Up the hill again, and I imagine it'll be same story again for Christian Menis, then Kieran Sharp and the rest of them behind as well. Sharp was within a tenth of a second at a time before he started to lift off towards the end of the straight last lap, but this time he's not quite going to get that close. He will still save the field, and they will just start to think about maybe distancing Daniel Thomas. That gap is opening up to a bit of a concerning distance now, actually.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be, Daniel Thomas is not going to be overly pleased, I don't think, with those two getting away a little bit. And the push really has to be on now for the number 60. Cannot afford to let the front two get away. If the slipstream is lost, then realistically wave bye-bye to a good opportunity of winning this race unless the top two come together. But, I mean, you're going to be hard-pressed to get a chance of that towards the end of the race. So Thomas really has a lot of work to do. And with Ned Wharton just in behind, I think Ned Wharton's got to start to be thinking about whether he needs to make a move to keep himself in contention. Joe Coffin won't be the one to push on because he is leading his own class by 8.7 seconds. Doesn't matter where he classes or finishes overall in the GT4s. He's leading his individual class. That's all that matters to him, realistically. Christian Menis, though, starting to turn up the wick a bit, you feel. And Kieran Sharp just able to stick with him. There's just nothing that Kieran Sharp isn't able to do, it seems, at the moment.
There's a rare bit of oversteer there from a GT4 car. You saw it there with Kieran Sharp out of pit path. Just saw him in his time loss, actually. And the gap grows to nearly half a second, and that is actually going to help bring Thomas and the rest of them in. You can see Menis just trying to break the slipstream a little bit too sharp. Maybe he sees this as his opportunity, but he's got two pretty long flat-out runs coming up, even if it's not a straight there from the Kerpel Fair all the way round to the bus stop chicane. It is a long slipstreaming section, and that has allowed Sharp to regain a tenth and a half of what he lost, and now Thomas gets a bit closer as well because Sharp has sort of brought him in almost with the slipstream. Again, he hits the curb though out of the final corner. Not the best run onto the front straight. The thing that's surprising to me actually as well at the moment is the fact that Ned Wharton and Joe Coffin are not showing any signs of concern either. That the car in front of them, Daniel Thomas, might be losing the draft to those up in front. They're not seemingly trying to get past him at all to try and lead the charge. They're just sort of happy to sit there and let him continue to try and stay with them, which at the moment he's showing to be struggling with more and more.
Yeah, he's clinging onto the back now. He's now over a second behind Kieran Sharp, not what he really needs at all. And we could see that gap exponentially grow out with the loss of the slipstream, meaning that, you know, those tenths that were able to be regained down these straights are just going to be lost now. And all the time that was already being lost in the corner is going to be felt that little bit more. But interesting to see how this battle's going to pan out. Of course, for Christian Menis himself in this GT4 Pro Championship, comes into this third after only a third and a fourth in the opening couple of rounds, and is quite some way back from Kieran Sharp. I think realistically, Christian knows that his battle may be with Daniel Thomas. So to have Sharp between them at the moment and to start pulling that gap is going to be what he's focusing on. And for Ned Wharton, who hasn't been here for the opening couple of rounds, he's not really going to be in championship contention at all because, you know, if there's only 5 rounds in the season and he missed 2 of them, it's pretty much impossible to be in championship contention.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's not one of those seasons you can afford to slip behind on. As the long pit stop continues, by the way, for Louis Heskiv. James Smagersgeld seems to be out the race at the moment. Gianluca Elliott, at the very least, is having a very long stop. Possibly even is out of the race as well. Luca Monroe is starting to get away with third place a bit and actually catch Ethan Marone for second. But here comes the leader, Aidan Carter, down the inside of Georgie Mackay and David Brown in their fight in GT4. This is where the race gets interesting now as the GT3s come through finally after half an hour.
Yeah, interesting to see that they are starting to almost come to life. You wouldn't expect pit stop phases to start anytime soon, so clearly just drivers maybe feeling a little bit happier in where their cars are at right now. There's still a bit of lapping ongoing, less than we've seen in the last couple of weeks, or last couple of rounds, of course, but still it's going to be a factor as we run our way through this race. Gap's still a little bit wider, particularly at the front in the GT3 categories, but particularly towards the back end of podium positions. There is a lot of fight to be had, looking particularly at P3 in that GT3 Pro battle. Only a second and a half between Silva and Conkley. That's going to be one we have to watch out for. There's about 3 seconds between Pittman and Anstis for P3 in the AM class. So definitely opportunities are on the table, and with the lapping that is going to start to be ongoing, those opportunities could become a little bit clearer.
Well, the GT3s are still 18 running, by the way, and they are covered by a minute and a half. So it is going to be a very long period of lapping now, and for the most part these GT4s are only going to be lapped twice by these GT3s. So, certainly if you're at the front end of that GT4 field. Nathan Anstis is going to be slowed down here at Beau Rouge, and there's going to be a big chance for Jake Pitt if he just lays off the back end of that McLaren here on the run up the hill. Well, he's going to get away with it. Oh, well, he's going to go off, but he will get away with it, and Jake Pitt will get a run regardless. Here he goes in the slipstream now on the way up in towards the common. There's your slowdown for the McLaren. That's to be expected. Luca Monroe, meanwhile, or at least he gives up the place to Jake Pitt. Meanwhile, for second, Luca Monroe has just got past Ethan Marone, and this could turn into a very large battle indeed if it gets out of hand. But Monroe got through, I think, it towards Lecom as well, just a bit further up the road from these guys in GT4 AM. It's a good race so far from Luca Monroe in GT4 AM. He's not been on the podium yet, and this is how he did it. Started with traffic on the outside in towards Lecom. He was squeezed as much as possible by Marone, but just broke later. The inside for the second part. Slight mistake from Marone. Bit too nice through the second part of the chicane, and that's Luca Monroe to second place.
Yeah, Monroe doing a fantastic job now in the GT4s. I don't think Bugembe is going to be in any way pleased with his pace so far in this race. Coffin has just disappeared up the road, and for Bugembe, I mean, of course, all the way down in P12, he's not really battling towards the front. And just to see the likes of Monroe get ever closer to the front, Marone, of course, still battling in there, and of course just lost the position. But for Bugembe, to get more drivers basically that are going to be more competitive with him if he loses a lot of points tonight is not what he needs to see. And you know, not necessarily the drivers that are closest to him in the championship getting the most points, but if Monroe, Marone, Mackay can gain up towards the back of him, puts him under more pressure going in towards the final couple of weeks of the season. That's not really what he needs, and the difficult race so far not helping him out at all, particularly with Joe Coffin leading the race and looking imperious in doing so.
Yeah, absolutely a big advantage. Joshua Bugembe currently running 12th. We will see at the end of the day where he gets to, because they are tied on points going at the end, or going through the start of today. Here comes the leader through the GT4 leaders, as it were. Aidan Carter clear for quite another few laps now of GT4 traffic, and notice that Adam Watson not clear going in towards Lecom. He's flashing the lights furiously at Daniel Thomas, who does actually lift off, which is pretty surprising. It's very nice, really overly nice to Adam Watson, but anyway, Watson now will be slowed down by these couple of GT4s through Lecom. Now into Bruxelles. He's going to split the leading battle apart, actually, and this is going to give Aidan Carter an even bigger lead.
Yeah, and continues to really work his way up the order with Adam Watson getting that little bit start. 2.2 seconds is now the gap, and it just looks like it's getting increasingly more comfortable for the 42 driver. Not, again, had the easiest opening couple of rounds, and they're definitely going to be looking to come back into the kind of battle that I think they'd expect themselves to be. 10 points behind Matt Treverton in P4 coming into this race is Aidan Carter, but with a win here would really close up to some of those guys, particularly with Cheverton down in 8th. Conkley is fighting towards the podium positions with Mike Barber not exactly fighting for a podium down in P6. This is a fantastic opportunity for Carter. The question is going to be over the next 56 minutes whether they're able to hold on to the lead or whether Watson will come back through. I think there was battling in the foreground through Piff Path.
There was a bit traffic induced, it looked like, in GT4, just up ahead of Mackay and Brown again, who are fighting. Luca Monroe versus Ethan Rowan continues on. Just up ahead, there's a bit more side by side. It's going to be slightly ruined through GT4 free traffic there. As Morone has to slow down and the gap goes to over a second. David Brown's not going away though. On the way in towards Bonsuel, there could be a chance here, or is he just going to push? Maybe Brown is just going to push that McLaren. I don't think he quite got into the back of it, but he did make an effort to stay behind, I think. Through in towards Bonsuel. That's a bit wide there from Mackay, and now there's going to be a chance here for David Brown again. Sort of reluctant to break late on the outside line there, it looked like to me, in towards the bus stop, and stays behind again. A lot of reluctance in the first part of this race, and well, that can only mean in the second half it is going to get quite loud, and there are going to be more overtakes, because at the moment everybody's certainly got their eye on that second half of the race and the pit stop as well.
I think with this track being far more aggressive in terms of how much full throttle you have to put on around this lap compared to the circuit we've been to so far. I mean, Snetterton, the pit window was quite late in comparison to Donington Park, which was one of the widest pit windows I think I've seen for a 90-minute race. But here, with more fuel having to be used lap after lap, I think we're going to see a narrower pit window generally. Wouldn't be surprised if we start to see drivers in the next 5-10 minutes and everybody in really by that half-hour mark, because you know, an hour's worth of racing in these GT3s and GT4s is going to start to drain the fuel tank. So drivers are likely to run it dry. However, it's going to be a quicker run to dry here than it was at some of the slightly slower, slightly more, you rightly put it earlier, British circuits that we'll go to over the course of this season. So I think this is definitely an interesting pit window to keep an eye on, and especially with the long lap as well. You've not really got many opportunities over a 10-minute window.
Yeah, and I think there is probably something in the fact that this is a much more flat-out circuit than it was at Donington Park and Snetterton so far this season. Maybe a bit of a preview, or a bit of a window into what might happen at Silverstone next week. We'll be live same time, same place in the penultimate round of the season. There's a flash of the lights there just in front from Morone, it looks like. Here's another attempt from Brown. I can't tell whether he's just attempting to try and come through at the moment on the 37 car in front, or whether he's just, well, I don't know what else he's doing, but at the moment he's making sort of attempts, at least showing to be attempting to go through, but not ever late enough on the brakes anywhere to try and do it. Now then, this will be a good indication of the car behaviour as they make their way out of the curb pull thread. Just look at the way that the McLaren takes off here, but what about in the slipstream? Where's the Mercedes going to go? It is quicker in the slipstream here, but see, sometimes it looks like he wants to go through here, David Brown, but then you get to other stages like here, doesn't want to go side by side in towards Bonsuel for whatever reason, even though there's more pace in this Mercedes. Now, will there be a late braking here? Maybe even to the inside? No, lifting off, but in that case, why would he be looking at the outside of pit path? I don't really understand. It's sort of half and half attempts to go through and attempts to not at the moment. I don't really understand what's going on here. But anyway, David Brown is still fifth.
Yeah, you'd think that the bus stop chicane is probably one of, if not the best overtaking spot on the racetrack to make an effective move, but David Brown going to wait and see if he can make a move maybe up at turn, well, I was going to say at turn 6, but it is of course Les Combes. Far better to have corner names than corner numbers, easier to remember, but interesting to see if he's going to go for it. It looks a little bit too far back this time around, but you know, being so close to the rear end, pretty much pushing the car ahead through Blanchimont, you'd expect to move down towards the bus stop chicane, not how it's developed, and some GT3 traffic coming through as well. May make it a little more difficult to make a move in the next few corners, but it should clear, and the number 5 will end up coming through, and very nicely negotiated, and a fantastic place to catch the GT4 traffic around each other in that number 5.
Yeah, good slice of luck that time round. You do need a bit of it. No harm in saying so. Bit of bad luck just behind for the car following, Ben Bennyworth, recovering from that spin we saw through Les Combes at the hands of one of his teammates earlier on in the day. Now he slices himself in between this GT4 battle. There's only one gap, by the way, below a second in GT3, and you're seeing it on your screen at the moment with Bennyworth now caught by Nick Scott. There wasn't any a moment ago, but now there is. Scott is going to be also just held back through Pouon, though, so that gap could well be over a second pretty shortly as well. It's remarkable what traffic can do. These gaps can spread apart very, very quickly indeed, and as I say, this is now the closest gap in GT3 for a class position, that is. Not talking about for overall positions where there might be a pro versus an am, but for an actual class position, with only 40 minutes gone, there is no gap below a second. This is the closest.
Yeah, definitely. I think possibilities for a move, because Bennyworth will have been disappointed from that earlier incident that we saw, but I think the consideration has to be made here. How far up can he get through the order? Because he's a little way off the back of the likes of Sikorsky and Ettridge, but the pace is clearly there for the 63, even after the moment. So I think he's not going to try to not be focused about Nick Scott Dickerson, as we do see Bennyworth making his way through just up in head. Dickerson's going to get another position, maybe around the outside at the bus stop chicane, not really where he wants to be. He's going to lose a chunk of time to Bennyworth as Bennyworth continues onwards, but really difficult to see them make their way through. And Shell just up in front as well. You'd expect with the two teammates that Bennyworth should be allowed through a little bit easier than others would necessarily be.
There's a trip down pit lane, by the way, from Mike Barber. He might start to really kick off these pit stops now, though there's still probably quite a long way to go in terms of when these guys absolutely have to pit. Probably another 15 minutes in GT3 anyway. In Discord at the moment, Louis Hesketh is busy apologising to Matt Cheverton. You remember earlier on that Hesketh went wide through Blanchimont, then had a big spin in the grass and slammed straight into Cheverton, who was trying to accelerate past Hesketh rather than slow down and let him have his accident and then go past afterwards in the final run towards the bus stop chicane. You know, it's all very gracious and all very nice of Hesketh to be apologising or whatever, but kind of feel that Hesketh's accident was very much a thing on his own, and the fact that Cheverton was caught up in it wasn't really a lot to do with him.
No, it wasn't really. But you know, all these teammates almost coming through together, aren't they? Cheverton, I think, towards the front of the field will be, you know, trying to push forward after everything that's happened so far. You know, pit stops maybe in the offing. It's getting a little bit difficult. Number 5, number 63, going towards Piff Path chicane. That is, of course, Shell and Bennyworth as they run their way through together as teammates. Just in behind is, of course, their teammate of Nick Scott Dickerson as they get through some GT4 traffic. I think, generally, to make a point about these guys, teammates working almost as a pack will do well for them. I think it can, you know, almost create a little bit of team cohesion, particularly after the contact that we saw earlier. But also for these guys, show that there is competition, and competition is really quite healthy, particularly in a series like this, between some drivers like this as well, particularly at this level of sim racing. So great to see them going through together, and also a decent livery as well, I think it's fair to say.
Yeah. Very recognisable, these two or three, and pit stops here coming thick and fast now for Ben Bennyworth and Nick Scott Dixon, who follow one another into pit lane as well. Not that you can see because of the massive great rear wing. And the GT4 just in front of them, by the way, I think is still a mystery as well. He's running down towards the back end of the field, but coming into pit lane just inside halfway. But there is, well, the GT3's going a lap down, by the way, because, excuse me, not a lap down, it's John Hill trying to get past Zed Murray in towards the final chicane. And it's a bit of a dive. He was trying to go for a cutback there, but he actually would have been better served going round the outside through the final corner. But he didn't do that. He tucked in. And John Earl is not going to be able to get through this time around. This is for 8th place in the race. And John Earl, it's worth noting, has already made a pit stop here to repair some damage earlier on. And so this should be a fairly easy pass, because after all, he is passing Zed Murray, who hasn't been in pit lane yet. This is quite a lot of a time gain, actually, from John Earl over the course of the race, certainly since his pit stop versus Zed Murray.
Yeah, and Zed Murray. Oh, let's see. Oh, no, that's just not a car from the background. That's them, of course, coming out of the pit lane. It's difficult from that camera angle to not be slightly confused, but we'll see this move in the offing down in towards Les Carmes inside line. Should be suiting that BMW. Oh, maybe not, though, as a bit of an early braking move. Oh, the 93 is broken too late, in fact. It wasn't an early braking moment. It was, in fact, late braking from the 93, flashing of the lights as well, but... Oh. It almost looked like the 93 outbraked itself, and then wide moment as well. It's a bit messy, isn't it?
It was pretty physical in towards Les Carmes there, but they get away with it. But these are the leaders in GT4. Once again, still in the same order. Joe Coffin seems to be disconnected from them, though, and actually it is just probably a front two now. After everything that's happened so far in this race, we're approaching half distance, and it looks like there's just two in the race for the GT4 Pro field. I do worry, though, for Christian Menes here, that he's been leading them around. He's been giving them a load of slipstream, and I'm worried on his behalf that he's just going to have offered up all this slipstream to Kieran Sharp, who's going to be the big beneficiary of it, of all the fuel saving he's done so far. And Menes is going to be, well, not surprised maybe, but he's going to struggle later when Sharp goes ahead of him in the standings after a shorter pit stop. I can't see at the moment a way in which the Mercedes stops that from happening, really.
Yeah, always difficult. Ooh, that's a bit of a wide moment from Menes. We're seeing a couple of more moments come in from Menes, actually. We were talking about 15 minutes ago how calm and collected he was, but at the moment, just a couple of moments that aren't going to be helping him out at all, as Kieran Sharp is still on his tail. But no, I think you're right in what you're saying. Particularly as we go over this half-distance mark, interesting to... I think for a lot of these drivers to consider all of the possible options towards the end of the race, especially if they're on their own a bit, because there's a lot of... almost difference in what can happen for them, particularly with the pit stop phase, where that could spit them out into. But to almost have plans ready in your head whilst you're on your own, whilst you're going down the Kemmel Straight, can really prepare you well for the end of the race, and maybe get you a position or two towards the end, which could be crucial at this stage of the season.
Down towards Bruxelles again, Sharp with, I don't think, any sort of interest, well, not interest maybe, but certainly no desire at the moment to go past, because it doesn't make strategic sense. Just stay as close as possible. They're continuing to distance those behind as well. Not only the two you can see directly behind of Daniel Thomas and Neb Walton, but actually the rest of the field as well. The next pro drivers, Brandon Loudon, 14 seconds further behind. All the other AMs are being distanced fairly comprehensively as well now. So the traffic around them is, well, there isn't much in the field now. Not many GT3s either. Although they're not that far away from catching up to these guys all over again. Aidan Carter coming up to lap some guys himself, who will be coming through on these GT4s pretty soon as well. But this is going to be another follow the leader situation. 43.5 minutes to go. There could be still a while before GT4 pit stops, but I do think that in the next 10 minutes all the GT3s will at least have to come in. We'll see how much further the GT4s can take it. They have taken it quite far on occasions this season, but as we've mentioned, this circuit is going to burn through fuel the quickest that we've seen all season so far.
Yeah, I think that window is going to be really, really intriguing to see, particularly the difference between the drivers, or if there is much of a difference between drivers who've been able to sit in the slipstream and those who have been braking the air and having to use a little bit more of that fuel to keep the pace that they have been keeping. GT4 and in up and down, left, right, Munro, Marone and Brown. Oh, they're getting very close down in towards the bus stop chicane inside line. Is there a move on? It seems that there is, but not going to materialise as they work their way through the second part to the exit and towards turn number 1. The BMW will get through in the end, but not really the well, it wasn't as quick as I think they definitely have hoped for. But for Marone and Brown trying to chase Munro, they can't really afford to lose too much of a gap to him. Coffin is away, he's disappeared. He's probably going to win this race without a spin or an incident for him. But this battle for P2 is going to be important for these guys, and I think for Munro, getting away is going to be crucial. But he's just being held back on a leash at the moment, isn't he?
Yeah, this is probably going to be quite important for the end of the race, to be honest. Georgie Mackay's got to be factored into this. Just 42 seconds in pit lane, 1 lap ago. 37 seconds rather in pit lane for Matty Wild 7 laps ago. So he can probably go to the end as well. He won't be that far away from these guys. There's still more stories to be written here in GT4, that is for sure. And the better thing about this battle is that they're actually willing to overtake each other at this stage. Maybe not the most tactically sound thing to do, but it is more exciting to watch these guys in GT4 at the moment as the games begin in GT3. We've been waiting for this for a while. Aiden Carter now is, well, he's got a decision to make because Adam Watson comes into pit lane from second. He's under the most pressure he's been all season, Watson. He's taken the initiative by pitting early.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting to see if Watson can gain anything here because notionally he's going to have to put more fuel into the car by going a little bit longer, but is he just trying to surprise a little bit? Has he used that much fuel? Difficult to really say right now, but the person leading the championship, interesting strategy. First to blink. We haven't even seen many of the front runners in the G3 amps come in yet, so really interesting to see what Watson can do here.
Right down to the end of the pit lane, but one for Adam Watson, who goes up on the jacks. You're going to have time to do that here in this race. You're doing all the races. Fuel and tyres taken on at the same time now in GT3 and iRacing, of course. And that timer will tick above 22 seconds, I would suggest, before he even gets down off the jacks, and then maybe a little bit further for a bit of insurance passing on fuel, maybe not, down off the jacks. And now we're just waiting on the fuel. What do you need? How much do you think you need here, Adam Watson, as he continues to get... That's a bit longer than I thought it was going to be, but there you go. Out of pit lane, pretty much immediately off the pit limiter and up the hill, out onto the circuit again. So, 29.8 seconds. That's actually not only the first stop of those leading two, but actually it's the first stop really of the front contenders at all. His nearest contender, who's realistically going to be going to the end of the race, is maybe Matt Cheverton, but probably Nathan Anstis. Cheverton is over 30 seconds behind Watson, and that is, Anstis is even further behind. So you can just see what an outlier Adam Watson is at the moment at the front of this field by pitting so early compared to those who were around him in the first part of this race.
We're going to see how it pans out and how wide his pit window is, because he's come in and out, and we've run through the ramifications of that. Aiden Carter just completed 1 extra lap, so a very long lap, over 2 minutes here at Spa, means that we are going to have to keep a really keen eye on the backwards. Oh my word, Sikorsky! Oh no, and spinning! Oh, and the moment, slowing down in towards the second part of the chicane, putting him off, then tries to put too much power down to get the car and rectify some of the time, loses Sikorsky the lead in Ettridge, inherits it. Can't believe his luck in that Ferrari.
What a catastrophe. That is a complete disaster for Sikorsky. We'll get a replay on that in a few moments' time, but that is a complete disaster there for Franek Sikorsky. And at some point, you just think, well, I might as well pit in anyway. We'll see. As he went to the outside here. The GT4 was so worried about not being able to get to pit lane, but he slowed down probably too much. Then Sikorsky went for a spin, sort of self-made. You can't really blame Sikorsky for trying to go through on the right-hand side here, because the Mercedes does not stay where it should have done. But then he certainly can blame him for dropping it on the rear. And at this point here, he's done the right thing by getting off the road. But just come in, just pit in. You're going that slowly anyway. I don't see why Sikorsky didn't just cut his losses and come into pit lane. As in live pictures, you may have seen it. The bottom right-hand side of your screen, Ethan Marone went off out of the pit path chicane and into the wall.
Yeah, hard hit for him, not what he needs at all, as that was Ettridge's view from getting into the lead in the GT3 AM class. But for Ethan Moran, we're going to see it right here. Is it a drop of, I think it is just a drop on his own, dips it out too far wide into the grass, into the gravel, tries to recover it, and in doing so overcorrects, fronted into the wall. Not what he needs at all, and the 14 may have some hefty damage. At least has lost a chunk of time that he couldn't really afford in that tight battle at the front of the GT4 AM class.
It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but it was pretty bad. David Brown has also got past Luca Monroe in all the carnage. So that's because Luca Monroe's come into pit lane, but it's very interesting now in GT4 AM that we'll check in with later, as the Porsche's teammates who have already stopped now making their way through on traffic. This is a battle, by the way, for 15th place overall in the field, as Christian Meniz continues to lead in GT4. These guys might carry on for another 10 minutes yet, and I would be surprised if there's even as much as an overtaking attempt from Kieran Sharp, maybe even before the final lap of their stint. On that lap, maybe, he will go for it, but until then, probably not. Meanwhile, Aiden Carter comes in. This is the moment of the race now for the overall lead.
Yeah, and what can Carter do with this pit stop? What is the difference in time going to be between Aiden Carter and Adam Watson, the 42 and the 291, as we see Carter go around La Source, of course, in this incredulously long pit lane. Probably the longest in, one of the longest in iRacing, at least, definitely the longest that will be on the calendar here. What is the difference going to be between the two drivers who are leading this race and have been leading this race right from the start? We can see it, Watson at the bottom, going in towards Blanchimont before Carter's even stopped on the mark. So this is going to be a really tight battle. They were only a couple of seconds apart before the pit stop phase. What's it going to be when they exit the pit lane? It's going to be interesting.
There's the split screen. You see how far the distance is, by the way. It's a very long pit lane here at Spa, and Watson's got traffic through the final chicane as well. Carter, of course, will have had traffic at various points throughout these in-laps anyway, so hard to read too much into that. Here comes Watson in towards turn number 1. That's off the jacks there for Carter. After the 20 seconds, he's changed to 4 tyres, and now he gets out of pit lane. He'll have to go up the hill here, so while he does look a long way ahead at the moment, it won't be quite as big as you think, because he's got to go through this awkward pit exit now. Out wide through Radion and Eau Rouge. He will still be in the lead, but how much is the distance? That is the key here. Adam Watson on board with him at the bottom of your screen, and you'll see him at the top of your screen as well. There now, as he comes through the Kemmel Straight, and the gap now starts to normalise. According to this, it's over 5 seconds at the moment. That shows that Carter has taken a big advantage, and he's taken 5 seconds shorter in terms of fueling there. I've got to admit, I thought Watson's stop was quite long, and Carter clearly thinks so as well. He's got 5 seconds shorter in the box.
Yeah, let's see if that has been nailed in terms of the strategy, or whether that was just a slight underfuel on where Carter would want to be, just to make sure that they were out in front. But we'll have to wait and see over the remaining 35 minutes here in this race. Still Pedro Silva, Rachel Conkley and Andrew Pike at the front of the field, yet to come into the box as Carter gets to the inside at Poole, negotiating through some traffic. But good stop for Carter. That's exactly what was needed. Watson has got a lot of work to do now, but really the gloves are off. The drivers know what each other is doing in terms of the strategy. They're racing to the end now, and all of the tools they have beneath them are what they're going to carry all the way to the checkered flag.
Well, just under 35 minutes for Carter to bring this home now. I think it is almost a victory lap for him, as long as he doesn't really start to drop the ball in these final 35 minutes. If he drives like he did in the first hour, he'll be fine, as into the pit lane comes the brief race leader, Pedro Silva. Currently placed 8th in the championship after a 7th and an 8th place finish in GT3 Pro. Looks like he's going to better that here today, because 7th place, Matt Cheverton, started this sequence over a minute behind him, although you do lose a lot of time in pit stops around here. This is the GT3 or 4 Pro lead, rather. I've got to notice Daniel Thomas is back again in this group again, but it's still Christian Menny's leading, and still no sign of pit stops here. Nearly an hour gone now.
Really are pushing it impressively long. So many of these drivers. GT4s we were always going to expect to go a little bit longer than the GT3s, but still continuing onwards, even with the high fuel consumption that they are likely to have been facing in this race. Anybody taking the pit road option this time around? Not quite. For a moment, Kieran Trott was coming in, but Kieran stays out and continues on yet another lap in P2. I mean, he's just almost twiddled his thumbs for 57 minutes. It's going to be interesting to see if he can either catch Menny's out or be able to do the overcut, spend less time in pit lane and just get himself ahead that way, because it's been a really calm display from a lot of the GT4 pros at the front of the field. Craig Hewlett's not going to be gone for him though, as he's right on the back of Carl Chase, who is quite literally being chased down in towards the bus stop chicane. Side by side maybe for the two of them, but Hewlett actually backing out of it into the corner. Chase goes a little bit deep though. I think Hewlett may have a look on the exit of the bus stop chicane and towards La Source here.
Dead heat over the line pretty much between these two. Hewlett versus Chase. They're almost touching it towards La Source for the next time of asking. Chase diving for an early apex. Hewlett going for a late apex and a run maybe towards Eau Rouge, but he'd be brave to get alongside here. And, well, Chase is almost forcing it here. Wants to take the left-hand side, clearly. Hewlett does not want to even be side-by-side. Up the hill now. That's why. And there's the better run, but there's an off-track, and there's an overtake because of an off-track. Well, that's going to be talked about afterwards. Hewlett and Chase will continue on, though. And you'd imagine with the Mercedes in front, down in towards Lecom, as the GTV Ferrari gets out in front of them. Chase breaks very. Hewlett did have his nose in front as a result of going off track through Radion that time round.
Yeah, and he's going to have to do it again to the outside line at Bruxelles. This is going to be a bold, brave place to make a move. Trying to tiptoe all the way around the outside. Not normally somewhere that you can see a move being made, and we won't see it this time round. Carl Chase will stay inside the top three, and that red car very much almost inciting some aggression at the moment as we go in towards Pouon. Side by side again. They won't leave each other alone. Chase around the outside. Can he hold it once more? It looks like he just about might be able to. Such a long way all the way around the outside at Pouon with a much tighter radius on the inside of the corner. Piff Paff will have the inside line as well. And at the moment, there's just nothing that can be done. These two are running side by side again and again, but Hewlett just cannot find the right move right now.
Chase a bit out of shape there through Piff Paff again. Down in towards Stavolo, he's on the defensive. This is only going to give Hewlett another chance through Kerpulfrere. Is just not quite as nimble as that Cayman for a run out of this corner at this time round. The lead has changed, by the way, overall in GT4 as into the pit lane comes Christian Bennis. I suspect he might have been running out of fuel already. With 30 minutes to go, whereas the others are going to be able to go further. We'll see on that as Hewlett goes very wide through Bronsterop. He's going to get nowhere. And Carl Chase will hang on to third over the line. Not side by side for third this time round, which you'll be pretty pleased about. So Chase will be third, then it will be Hewlett. Then Ashley Toft, by the way, and Amy Grimm to round out those who have stopped, or not stopped rather, so far. Then Luca Monroe, who's showing me, so far in my screen, has only haven't done a 1 second pit stop. I don't believe that, but he's probably been in for longer than that. He is still protected, I think, to come out in second place, though. These guys are only costing themselves even more time by fighting.
Yeah, it's not really helping them out as we dip under the 30-minute mark in this race. Means that they're not going to have too much fuel to put into the car, but right now they're going to be on very low fuel loads, so the cars will feel as nimble as they ever will, albeit the tyres are going to be looking a little bit worse for wear as they run up towards Les Cons. Interesting to see that we've got a little bit of traffic coming through on these two. Is that's going to separate the duo? It doesn't really seem like it, because if anything, the GT3 is going to get stuck right behind Carl Chase as they go through Malmedy. Will make them move in towards Bruxelles, but it means that there is no time lost for Craig Hewlett at this part of the lap. Christy Menny's now over a minute off the lead, as we'd expect. The interesting nature of the rest of this race is going to be, how does Kieran Sharp play this? How does Daniel Thomas and Ned Wharton play this? Because they look like they're in a strong position. Can they utilise it, though?
Yeah. It'll be pretty remarkable if Menny just lets this go in the way that looks like he has at the moment, because so obviously staring us in the face as to what was going to happen. If he's let that happen almost to himself, then it will be very disappointing for him indeed. Egencarter leads, by the way, by 6 seconds in GT3. In GT3, Ricky Pittman leads the way. Now, Oliver Ettridge has just had a 4-minute pit stop, and we're trying to get to the bottom of what happened to show it. But at the moment, he's back here fighting with Andy Chow for 7th in the race, and that's bad news because Ettridge was going to gain points on Sikorsky after his problem. He's going to gain some of them back again as Chow breaks too late for the final chicane, but it's going to be a net loss of points on the day for Ettridge, who is having to recover these points once again for the first time this season, in fact.
Yeah, I think the podium is exactly what he was targeting at the start of the evening, but not looking exactly like it's going to be materialising, well, at least just yet. But, well, realistically not in the final 27 minutes of this race. Joe Coffin coming to the pit lane in the GT4 round. It's going to be interesting after leading for so long in that, in the slowest of the 4 classes. Still no movement from the likes of Sharp and Thomas and Wharton at the front of the GT4 pros, meaning that Christian Menes is still a minute 9 off the lead now. Feels like he's losing even more time, which you'd expect with the higher fuel loads in the car. Even with new tyres, it's going to be a little bit more laborious through some of these corners. Car not as nimble and light, not nimble and night, but you know what I was trying to say, as he will run his way through the next couple of laps. Sharp and Thomas and Wharton doing a great job to stick it out there with only 26 minutes remaining.
Still haven't seen these GT4 leaders in yet, which is expected, I would say, because of the cars that they are compared to the GT3s that have now all been in, by the way, at some point throughout the day. Doesn't mean that some of the drivers are not going to have to stop for a second time because they pitted so early, but it's a little bit of a better fuel run for the GT4s, always is. They can go a little bit further, and Sharp is just using this newfound clean air to just gently stretch the margin over Daniel Thomas and Ned Wharton. They are only just clinging on, really, although they weren't quite staying with Sharp when he was with Menes earlier on, so maybe it doesn't mean too much. In towards the final chicane again. When is going to be the moment? Now is the moment. Sharp coming into the pit lane, and the race-defining moment now in GT4 Pro is going to be upon us with Sharp into the pit lane.
Yeah, and Sharp in a good space in the race, in a good space in the championship as well. This is really a fantastic position for himself to be in as the long run pit road will continue as he makes his way in towards turn 1. But in the pit lane, of course, at such slow speeds, won't be able to exit the pit lane as you can in Grand Prix racing, but we'll continue onwards to the pit lane that is often using the endurance setups here at Spa. We'll go towards the one that is still used relatively regularly, of course, but not in Grand Prix racing. We will see the championship leader stop on his marks and get himself into the box. Interesting to see that Thomas and Wharton have stayed out there, of course. Whether they can try anything with this strategy is going to be interesting as well, because Kieran Sharp has stayed in P2 relatively comfortably, could have gone for the move and has decided against it, but he may find himself thrust into a position where he really has to go for a move, because Thomas and Wharton have nailed the strategy even more than he has.
And there's David Brown down the pit lane. Now, Christian Menes in that 4th place at the moment in GT4 Pro has got a big moment coming up here. His pit stop was 33 seconds long. Oh, Kieran Sharp's was 9 seconds shorter. There's going to be no chance here. Kieran Sharp is going to be in front, and there's not much doubt about it either. Not sure where all that time save is going to have come from for Kieran Sharp, but he's certainly going to be out in the lead by some distance. This, meanwhile, is what happened to Oliver Ettridge. Oh, my word! That's a huge accident for him at the top of the hill. Through Rouge and Radion, Oliver Ettridge has had a championship-defining spin and crash at the top of the hill there. He was projected to gain points today on Francorchamps, who's 7 points ahead of him going into today. But Ettridge is going to lose points again by the looks of things. Here he is trying to regain them, but that is a huge, huge championship crash for him.
It is not what he needed whatsoever. Sikorsky, and can't believe his luck now, but Ettridge is going to be absolutely gutted. It's fair to say that he is, going to be absolutely distraught with that. So far now, off the back of his rivals fighting for some more minor points. Of course, 2 podiums, 2 P3s coming into this race. Not really going to materialise once again. Negotiating his way through a couple of the teammates, the Quartermass Motorsport drivers. The 63, that is, being overtaken of Ben Bennyworth. Then it'll be the 25. Just a little bit further up of Nick Scott, but these guys are actually all fighting for the overall position, so even though it maybe looked like they're lap cars, Ettridge is just flying through them with the pace he's got.
Well, he's showing the pace he's had all day, but he's not often been around drivers with this much contrast to show it, really. Now then, this is where the accident, of course, was, up the hill through Rouge and Radion just a few laps ago, about 4 or 5 laps ago now. He'll be ultra wary of that again over the course of the rest of the race as he gets in the pit slipstream now. Excuse me. Oh dear, what's going on here? And Ettridge is flashing his lights rightfully as well. What is going on there for Nick Scott, who's weaving around all over the place? That was more than one move on the straight. Ettridge gets through though in towards Lecombe, and he can fend off the response as well from Nick Scott Dickerson. Why he was weaving around quite like that, I'm not sure. Now he has another look in towards Brussels. Ettridge into the top 5 in bizarre circumstances.
If Ettridge did something to Nick Scott Dickinson at some point, I'm not sure at all, but clearly unhappiness between the two of them. Ettridge having rid of the last laugh, really, though, to get ahead as he now comes into Pouon, but now it's going to be the interesting battle between these two teammates of Scott Dickinson and, of course, Ben Benny with Andy Schell just about to appear in the background. There he is in that similarly liveried car. All three of them running towards the back end of the top 10.
Daniel Thomas is going to be leading here. So, the pit stop times in GT4 have worked themselves out. Daniel Thomas only 21 seconds in the box, which was 3 seconds shorter than Kieran Sharp. So, I thought he didn't have the speed to even stay with Sharp. Turns out he did, but he was just holding himself back, it seems, now. And second place will be Sharp, ahead of Ned Wharton. Then Christian Menzies is going to be fourth place, who's had by far the longest stop, by the way. Not sure that's all because he's led the whole race so far and he's had to put more fuel in, but because after all, Adam Watson had to put in more fuel in compared to Aidan Carter earlier on, and those two weren't even in anyone's slipstream. So there's more to be unpuzzled here, but Daniel Thomas is leading, and I would say that is a bit of a surprise.
Yeah, and Kieran Sharp, just like I said, he's now really going to have to go after the lead now. Sat in P2 for so long, twiddling his thumbs, waiting for seemingly the pit stop phase, but the pit stop phase has come and gone now. He's got 20 minutes to close down that 2.5 second gap and make a move through on Daniel Thomas. Thomas fantastically placed, though, to try and defend the lead which he currently holds, but there's one driver you don't want almost immediately behind you. It is going to be Kieran Sharp with the pace, with the dominance that he's shown in the opening couple of rounds, looking for 3 in a row. Daniel Thomas the one to try and stop him, it seems.
Unbelievable. Well, it's not over. It's less than 3 seconds, but it is unbelievable. 20 minutes to go. And that was a change for third. Rachel Conkley getting past Pedro Luis Silva by the looks of it. And that was quite close in towards Lecom. No move. Thought it was going to be, actually, from Nick Scott trying to get back past Ben Bennyworth, but no. So here's Conkley, and there is Silva just in behind. Silva, as I mentioned, long way down in the championship at the moment. Rachel Conkley is in 5th. This wouldn't be, it would be Conkley's best result of the season now, because that's a third place. They're back with a third place now, isn't it? So yeah, they are back now, and they're at third overall too. I should add, which is slightly puzzling me. So third place in class and overall. Rachel Conkley now ahead of Pedro Silva. They all are all still in the slipstream, as it were, of Aidan Carter and Adam Watson leading the way. Aidan Carter has not finished on the podium yet this season at the moment. Looks like taking a race victory. Overall, it's going to be another decent day for Adam Watson, because Ben Cooper is down in 8th position and not having a good day after finishing second twice in the first 2 rounds. Watson is still going to gain points in the championship, I would say, pretty convincingly over the rest of his closest rivals.
Yeah, Carter's going to be the happiest. It's really clear to say. 7th in the championship coming into this race, currently leading the way. Pick up more than double the points gained so far in this season, which catapult, I believe, onto 89 points. Of course, everybody else will improve, but that could even be good enough for, as we've been talking about, P4 in the championship, maybe P5, but a really good improvement. Definitely going to be close to that top 3 in the championship either way. Ricky Pittman as well, having a good day so far in that AM class, going under the radar a little bit with the incidents for Sikorsky and Ettridge. Now puts himself in a great place to pick up his first win of the season, very possibly, which would put him into second place in the championship ahead of Ettridge, but would still see himself behind Sikorsky, with Sikorsky still picking up the points for second right now. So really is going to be an interesting battle in basically both the GT3 classes, with Sikorsky still leading the way but looking a little bit shaky, mistakes creeping in 3 races so far this season. Pittman consistent in the opening round, a little bit inconsistent at Centerton, but once again finding that consistency, not necessarily the headline pace, but keeping it clean, getting it back towards the front of the field, and yeah, really interestingly set up into the final 2 rounds.
It is. Yeah, I think the maths would have it at 3 points, if my maths is correct, between the two of them going into those last 2 rounds. It's probably the most wide open of the championships, to be honest. GT3 and there is Pittman. I think having that quiet day for Pittman, especially as you say, not a headline pace, but I think that's okay in GT3 AM, especially the fact that Sikorsky has been up front mixing it with the top guys, seems a very good thing in terms of speed, and there's no doubting that Sikorsky has got speed. I think, in fact, over one lap, I think Sikorsky probably is out and out quickest over one lap in the class, but that doesn't count for a lot when the races are an hour and a half. And if you get involved in incidents, that's the real key. It is about consistency. Maybe that has helped Pittman a little bit. Not trying to say that Sikorsky qualifying so well is a disadvantage by any means, but it does put you up with the pros. That comes with its added pressure. That comes with a different style of racing a little bit to qualifying in the midfield. It's a bit more difficult to keep yourself to yourself and stay out of the way of everybody when you're starting in was it second place or third place? I think third place, wasn't it, for Sikorsky here today? Whereas Pittman's starting down in the field, just been able to slowly make that progress work his way through. And this is the result, a 2.5 second lead with a quarter of an hour to go.
Yeah, exactly what he would be wanting to be seeing right at the front of the field in the class, but it's never over till it's over. 16 minutes still. I mean, that's what, 7 or 8 laps, maybe 6 depending on what, actually probably more like 7 or 8 laps depending where the leader is remaining in this race as Ricky Pittman continues onwards. But that gap to Sikorsky is not going to be comfortable for the time being, though. A couple of cars in between would help out, albeit one of them is about to disappear as they work their way in towards the double left-hander at Pouon. Daniel Thomas ahead of Kieran Sharp, 3 seconds. That gap increasing, isn't it? And continuing to do so in the GT4 Pros. I think we'd probably expect it to decrease, wouldn't we, with the pace that Sharp has put on. But Daniel Thomas went under the radar in the opening stint, now exploding in terms of the pace and looking like he's more and more likely to bring home that win in that number 60 car. Fantastic for his aspirations throughout the rest of this season, particularly as he comes into this race second in the championship after 2 P2s.
Oh, and here's some good news for Joe Coffin. Unfortunately, Joshua Pigembe going for a spin. Oh, he's a boy. Has he? Hang on. Oh, I spoke too soon. Sorry. No, they came and backed it straight into the wall there over the top at Radion. Now, that has unfortunately rubbed the salt into a pretty open wound for Joshua Pigembe because he had to make a very early stop in this race. He's still only 10th, and now he's coming into pit lane again with 2 drivers not that far behind him. So he could lose another couple of places here. That would be another 4 points lost. Just 11 points scored today with Joe Coffin out front. That'll be a 34-point gain. The momentum with which Joe Coffin will take in those final 2 rounds more than anything else will be very difficult to overcome now. This is a potentially season-defining day in a bad sense for Joshua Pigembe.
Yeah, Pigembe, fantastic opening couple of rounds. The season really kicked off well, but this isn't what you need at all, particularly in the midway point of the season with only 2 more rounds to go. If this was, say, an 8 or 9 round season, you could almost get away with a bad 3rd round, especially being one of the championship leaders going into this race. But the situation that we find ourselves in, this is just, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to come back from. It's going to require big mistakes from Joe Coffin himself in the 136, and he hasn't looked like being too fallible in the first half of this season, and with 14 minutes remaining in this race, has by far the biggest lead in all 4 classes. The next biggest behind his 23 seconds is about 8 seconds for Aidan Carter. So really, really an impressive drive for Joe Coffin, and in one of the biggest classes, in fact the biggest class here this evening as well. So incredible performance when when you consider all of those elements.
Yeah, it is. It's I think one of the most interesting actually to watch GT4 AM. Going to see one of the reasons why here. Amy Grimm versus Georgie Mackay. Now this is surprising to see Mackay so far down compared to earlier in the race, but this should be a pretty easy pass between teammates, an exchange of honours as it were. Oh, maybe not. Oh dear, the teammates making contact down the straight. Will that be a sign that Grimm's going to back out of this, or will they have to fight? Well, both are going to race into the corner, and actually Mackay is going to have a bit more of a difficult job to get ahead of this Mercedes for 8th place. I thought there was just going to be some niceties between teammates, but certainly not.
It's not like we've seen niceties between teammates so far today, have we? We've seen a couple of moments between teammates, a couple of incidents as well. So notionally you'd expect some nice, happier racing between teammates, but that is not what we've come to expect in the opening couple of rounds of this season. But good to see that the gloves are really off and that drivers, in the same team, albeit in different machinery, really going at it and fighting for every single position. I think Carl Chase has overtaken David Brown as well in that GT4 AM class for P3. That all-red car was defending for some time, but I believe now back onto the podium places.
Looks like it. This is David Brown on replay. Oh, that is almost an exact replay of what Ethan Marone did, isn't it? Obviously, it's not a replay again because it's a different driver, but that is unbelievably similar for the same car in the same category, and very nearly slowing down right in front of one of the Porsches there. There's a flash of the lights from an oncoming GT4, and that is Marone, who will be feeling or be sympathising a little bit with exactly what David Brown has just experienced. You'd imagine Marone will gain a top 5 as a result as well. He's not going to pick Brown because there's so little time left in this race, and I don't blame him either. However, he's going to be walking wounded for the remainder of this one.
He's trying to wrestle the car around the circuit. It's not going to be easy. We've seen a couple of drivers drive with a damaged car and make mistakes after that. Wouldn't be surprised if the same happens again with David Brown, but he's got to be careful. And that's going to be priority number 1 for him. Inside line, nicely negotiated by Nick Scott Dickerson up into Eau Rouge and then up towards Radion as well. You could see in the back there, David Brown really wounded, having to cut across Radion there as they rose over the crest. And a bit of madness in the background. Is that 3-4 wide nearly for a moment? There's 5 cars all in the background, and they all try and fan out and overtake each other.
Dear, oh dear, Cheverton's trying to follow through here, and he hits one of the Porsches. He's played a bit of bowling there, a bit of pinball from Matt Cheverton, who goes straight through on Ben Cooper, and spinning to the outside there was one of the cars lapped down, maybe, was it? I'm not entirely sure what was going on there, because not everyone was on the same lap as everybody else. It was Andy Chell, who's not in the same class. That's the key hit. He hits the back of Cooper there, does Cheverton, who goes then straight into Chell, who goes for a spin as well. That's going to be an awkward one to debrief between those 3 there, as Cheverton was trying to work his way through. Admittedly, he's coming back from problems earlier. However, that's not an excuse to run into people. Cheverton has got 7th place, though, as a result.
In snooker, I think it's a plant, isn't it? You knock one into another and really get what you were looking for. Difficult moments, really, for Andy Chell. The innocent bystander on all that, just going around the outside. In fact, the front two in that battle were just really minding their own business, but everyone decided that he wanted to go a little bit faster than he was going and caused the contact, and is therefore spun a couple of cars around. Wouldn't be surprised if that's looked at after the race, but we'll wait to see if anything will be said about that one. Cheverton continues onwards in his newly found position inside, decently running towards the front of the field inside that top 7. Still not the best result ahead of Ben Cooper, and really when you think about it, 7th in the GT3 Pro class isn't necessarily going to be what he was targeting, but the points are going to be valuable, of course, and towards the final couple of rounds, as they are for every single driver. You mentioned earlier, points go all the way down to 20th, which means that every single driver who turned up tonight was in a position to win some points, and so not turning up could have been a big hit in some of the smaller classes particularly, so just getting the points on the board is going to be the crucial factor.
There is a big drop-off despite that, as you say, but everybody is going to get something from today as Cheverton makes his way up the hill. Now 1.7 seconds for the lead in GT4 Pro. You were pointing out as we got out of the pit stop phase that Thomas had actually extended the margin over Sharp and a gap we'd expected to come down. Well, that was true at the time, but not since. Just as if you invoked it to come down. Kieran Sharp is now within 2 seconds. He is by no means in striking range at the moment, and he's got to increase the rate at which he's closing because there are only 8 minutes left. Aidan Carter is just out of the opening few corners at the moment, so 4 laps to go. I don't imagine he'll get round to lap these guys again, so it'll be 4 laps for these guys as well. He has got to be gaining by half a second a lap here to get there with time remaining to have a go at an overtake here.
It's not long left now. I mean, he's gained that second and a half, but is it really going to be enough of a turn up of the wick for Kieran Sharp to get there and make that move? We've seen it's difficult to really make a move stick. A couple of drivers have spent, nearly a full lap, complete lap, going side by side, looking for moves in certain corners, not quite being able to get them done. Daniel Thomas may start to get a little bit concerned, though, if Sharp just gets ever bigger and bigger in his mirrors. But with 7 minutes to go, there would be in this GT4 class only 3 more laps to go. Had they not been just sat behind, or if they were not just sat behind a leader. So it's not long left now for Kieran Sharp to make these moves, and losing a few tenths again in the final corner, in the first corner of the lap. He's got to find a lot more now, and time is really running out.
Time is running out. Yes, we'll check in, of course, on him, but he has got to catch up a bit quicker than that. There is a bit of a train for the lead in GT3 AM, and it's not all with AM drivers. So Ricky Pittman is leading the way, as we know, but Andrew Pike is between him and Franciszek Sikorski, who is currently in second place. In the green Ferrari you can just see in the background, there is Pike just between them in the Corvette. He's having a pretty good day, running 5th in the GT3 Pro class. It's a replication of his result from 2 weeks ago for Andrew Pike, but at the moment he is separating the closest leading battle we have in the field. These guys are just about half a minute behind Carter, so he's crossing the line with 3 laps to go right now. They will cross the line with 3 to go at that time as well. Sikorski in a very similar situation to Sharp, in that he needs to increase the rate at which he's catching, get there quickly, otherwise he won't be getting there at all.
And we're kind of seeing a bit of a juxtaposition between the GT3 Pro and the GT4 AM, the other two classes, with Carter and Coffin really gaining away or consolidating their leads. Meanwhile, in the AM, the GT3 AM and the GT4 Pro, Pittman is coming under more pressure. Daniel Thomas is coming under more pressure as well. So, of course, he's getting ever closer, and if Pittman decides to fight this with Andrew Pike, it could get even more dangerous for him in the closing 3 laps. They'll come up towards the line to get on towards that 3rd last lap, but for Pittman now, in his mirror, is having a pro driver. It isn't really what he wants, because it's going to complicate matters with himself and Franciszek Sikorski after his mistake at the final corner at the bus stop chicane a little while ago now, after trying to lap some of the traffic. But Sikorski looking for what would be yet another win in this championship, his 2nd in a row, and after the disappointment that he would have felt at the opening round at Donington Park, I think he's still trying to rectify the points that he feels like he lost in the opening round of the season. Here at Spa, getting to the front of the field is going to be crucial in that. Yeah,
just feel like he's avenging that slightly. And don't forget, he's had a spin earlier on in the day, Sikorski, out that bus stop chicane, which he's going to be feeling a bit aggrieved about, although it was down to him in the end. There was a GT4 around at the time that he maybe feels contributed to it, but it's all down to him now. There is not much that anybody else can do to overturn this leading advantage. Andrew Pike's still in between them. Pittman would normally, I suppose, be wanting the pro driver to get on by and get out of the way here, but actually he's acting as a bit of a human shield right now between Sikorski and that GT3 AM lead. So I don't think Pittman particularly minds him being there. As we mentioned at the start of the day, Pittman is only 9 points behind Sikorski in the championship. Although we've not been talking about him as a championship contender particularly, he is in the mix in the most wide open of our 4 classes, championship-wise. And at the moment, it is our closest race for the win as well. Sikorski brings the gap down to a 2nd. Last lap, he was 3 tenths quicker. We'll give him 4 tenths quicker if you add the hundredths up as well. So Sikorski is getting this to go the right direction. And another couple of laps like that, he'll be right with these guys. And Pittman and Pike have got a bit of a decision to make here as to how they're going to sort this one out between the 2 of them for 5th place overall.
Yeah, this is going to get really, really interesting now. Pittman is going to have to defend the inside line towards the bus stop chicane, of course. Not really a battle in terms of points for him, but as he goes, they both go wide even as they come through Blanchimont. Is there going to be any kind of sense? No, Pittman will defend and hang on for a little while longer as Pike gets ever closer, as Sikorski gets ever closer. That gap now flirting with being under a 2nd as they get on towards their penultimate lap of the race. It's after John Earl. Ooh, a bit of a slide, big slide, snap of oversteer. All goes wrong for the 95, and he just about avoids everybody coming back onto the circuit.
Good avoidance from everyone there. I think Oliver Etheridge might have been in the middle of all that. He's still 5th, by the way, in this class, and losing points to these guys at the moment. Even if Sikorsky only finishes in 2nd place, he would lose 12 points. When he started the day, only 7 behind. That's pretty costly. It'll be up the hill through Eau Rouge and Radion they go again. Pittman, Pike, Sikorsky. Does Pike decide he's not a factor in this battle and just let's get out the way of it anyway here with 2.5 minutes to go? Much like what you're seeing there with the Corvette in front of Zeb Murray, who has been doing that all day long, in fairness. Pike deciding that he doesn't want to get out of the way right now either. Not sure how Sikorsky's going to be feeling about that, to be honest, as he homes into the back. He can't really go any quicker now, to be honest, Sikorsky. He's got to try and find a way past Pike, and that is showing that it isn't going to be easy. He's not going to be let through by the looks of this.
No, he's not. Sikorsky just trying to find any way of getting closer to these two, maybe to make a move to offset, well, if not Ricky Pittman, at least Andrew Pike, to give himself a fighting chance of going for the win here. Just having that car between is going to be so off-putting for Sikorsky and so infuriating, I'm sure, because it's going to almost feel like he's got far less of a shot at being able to go for the lead, because he's not only having to overtake the one car with time pretty much expiring, but overtake 2 cars to gain any kind of points at all. If he overtakes the P5 Pro driver of Andrew Pike, I mean, it means that he's one place further up in terms of the overall order. He may have a better chance of going for Pittman, but then if he doesn't actually get Ricky Pittman, it's already futile. He doesn't gain any more points for doing so with the different classes that they're in. But to close it up now, 8 just about that 9/10 of a second mark. It's as close as it's been in the last half an hour, and Sikorsky's going to be pushing hell for leather to get himself to the front of the field right now.
No GT4 traffic either to interrupt them on this final lap, which has already been started by Aidan Carter, who's got 7.5 seconds at the front of this field and is embedded actually in GT4 traffic himself at the moment, in towards the final chicane for these 3. Again, absolutely nothing doing. Zeb Murray is the slower GT3 up ahead of them. There's the white flag waving, flashing up the lights from Pittman. He knows how important this is. He knows that there could be traffic with a role to play in these last few moments. In towards La Source here for the final time. Never going to be any overtake into there. Now Sikorsky is going to try and pick up the double slipstream, is get as close as possible here as these 3 different manufacturers make their way down the hill in towards Eau Rouge. Again, Zeb Murray in the thoughts of Ricky Pittman at the moment as he looks up ahead and sees what he's got to navigate now on this very last lap. He'll be getting the width of a slipstream here. Murray's going to be pulling over to the right-hand side to get out the way of all 3 of these guys now. The lap cars, and Pike's going to do the same. Sikorsky let through, but is it too late here maybe?
Let's see, in towards Lake Calm. Difficult to really see which way Pete drivers are going to go, but Sikorsky's just about going to negotiate his way through the traffic and has that shot at Ricky Pittman now. He's got to somehow find a way to gain 3, 4, maybe even 5 tenths in this middle sector to have a go towards Blanchimont, to have a go towards the bus stop chicane. But Sikorsky now has that carrot dangling in front of his face. Quite literally, it's Ricky Pittman. Nothing to separate the top 2. This is by far the closest battle for the lead in all 4 of the categories. Kieran Sharp is closing on Daniel Thomas, but he isn't quite as close as these 2 are going to be right towards the final couple of corners.
Well, let's see what happens into the bus stop chicane as further out front Aidan Carter is 8 seconds in the lead and coming into the final chicane right now. He is going to take a famous victory in the Motorsport UK Esports GG Challenge here at Spa. The only round outside of the United Kingdom is going to go to Aidan Carter, who's had a difficult season so far and will step onto the podium for the first time this afternoon on the top step of the podium in GT3 Pro. In GT3 Am, the conclusion is as of yet a mystery. Here comes Ricky Pittman versus Francesc Sikorsky, who's currently the championship leader. Could take a big step forward here with a last lap pass if he could get it, but Ricky Pittman's got a very good run out of the final curve pull flare and now into the final bus stop chicane. He's too far back surely. Sikorsky going to have to dive from a very long way. He could go for the second part here. If he runs fast through this first bit, he can get down the inside of the second, but he doesn't go for it. It's a high risk manoeuvre and Ricky Pittman will hang on. Just a quarter of a second in it at the line, but Ricky Pittman wins for the first time this season in GT3 Am and steps onto the to the podium for the first time this season since Donington Park at the opening round. It is a big day for Pittman in the championship and indeed in terms of an isolated result as well. By taking this victory, he's put in a statement this season, that's for sure, as in GT4 Pro, Daniel Thomas is going under late pressure. We were surprised to see him out in the lead, in all honesty, with the short pit stop that he had. Kieran Sharp has eventually done the work of closing, but this race is just about 5 or 10 minutes too short for him, as it was for Sikorsky as well. Daniel Thomas is going to withstand the pressure, and he's going to win in GT4 Pro as well. The first time we've had a different winner this season, and it's Daniel Thomas who finally takes that runner-up spot and turns it into a first-place finish here at Spa. And further behind, Joe Coffin is going to win for the second round in a row. It was second place at Donington, first place at Snetterton. He's going to go along with a first place at Spa as well, in by far the most dominant of our 4 race victories here tonight.
Yeah, really impressive from Joe Coffin again. Fantastic result for him, extends that championship lead, and really looks like he's going to be the driver to beat in the final couple of rounds in the GT4s. But for the likes of Ricky Pittman, Sikorsky, great battling towards the end. I think Pittman knows that if there'd been one more lap, he probably would have been under a lot more pressure. Sikorsky absolutely would have gone for the move. Lots of teammates still that have come across the line. Big winners in terms of non-championship leaders coming to the front, and championship leaders in battles that are very close, being able to get away a little bit, extend those leads. And we really are set up perfectly as we go in towards Silverstone and, of course, Brands Hatch at the end of the season.
Adam Watson's still in a decent position as he goes into those rounds, but Aidan Carter has taken the win at Spa this time round by 8 seconds. Rachel Cogley got past Pedro Silva quite late on for a podium in the Audi there as well. Andrew Pike not that far behind, with Mike Barber, Matt Cheverton and Ben Cooper, the more delayed drivers this afternoon, taking 6th, 7th and 8th. All of those getting to the end. Same not true in GT3 AM, I'm afraid. Ricky Pittman finishing first, though, ahead of Francesc Sikorsky, as we just saw that great battle towards the line. Jake Pitt with a quite quiet day in finishing on the podium, with Nathan Anstis in 4th. Oliver Ettridge's crash at Radion put him down to 5th, unfortunately, with Ben Bennyworth 6th. Nick Scott Dickerson overhauled by his teammate there. He did finish ahead of Andy Charles, though. Zeb Murray was the only driver 1 lap down. John Earl was 4 down at the end, and behind all of the GT4s, as was Louis Hesketh and Gianluca Elia, who both retired from the race in the first half. GT4 Pro was won by Daniel Thomas for the first time this season, getting ahead of Kieran Sharp. Those two have been 1 and 2 now in all 3 of the races so far this season. Ned Walton with the only round this season so far from him giving a podium. Christian Menny's possibly disappointed with 4th after leading the first half of the race. Brandon Loudon finished 5th ahead of Ryan Moles, who retired halfway through that race. Joe Coffin wins in GT4 AM. The gap's smaller than 1 lap, it's fair to say, but it was a pretty dominant victory. Luca Monroe getting into 2nd, and Carl Chase, who held off Craig Hewlett, as we saw at times throughout that final run to the end. Ethan Marone recovering from the spin at pit to finish 5th. Same goes for David Brown to finish 6th. Georgie Mackay and Amy Grimm finished 7th and 8th. Then Ashley Toft was 9th ahead of Matty Wild, finishing in 10th place. Joshua Bugembe and Sean McCardle were the final drivers to get to the line. Dylan Mystery and James Magasgale did not. Bugembe 11th, by the way, pretty damaging for his championship hopes, I would say. Let's have a chat to some of the winners at the end of the day, starting with Aidan Carter, who finishes on the top step of the GT3 Pro podium. Congratulations, Aidan, on the victory, the first of the season for yourself. Tell us about that race and the battle with Adam Watson, because for the first time this season, Adam Watson was not the fastest driver in the field. It appeared to be yourself. What was your thoughts and emotions throughout that race?
Yeah, thanks guys. It was quite an exciting race actually for once. I've kind of been struggling a lot with the Corvette this season. I think the Corvette and British tracks don't really work very well together, so I knew Spa would be a better track for the Corvette, and coming in I was hoping for at least maybe a podium or something, but yeah, to be ahead of Adam Watson in qualifying and then to be able to hold on against him in the race, I was quite surprised, to be honest. I did think that Watson would be saving a lot of fuel in the first half of the race and that he'd maybe jump me in the pit stops, but that didn't happen. I actually gained time on him in the pit phase, so yeah, it was a bit of a surprise, definitely. I wasn't really expecting to be fighting for the win for this one, but yeah, I'll take it, and I'm glad that Adam's not won every race of the season.
Well, yeah, that is not going to be the case by the end now because of this. I mean, when you say this car maybe doesn't suit the traditional British circuits, can we maybe put Silverstone as an exception to that next week, because it is a Grand Prix circuit in the same way that Spa is. It has its differences, of course, many of them, but could we expect to see you going well next week as well?
Yeah, I think the Corvette will suit Silverstone more than all other British tracks. I think the biggest Achilles heel with this Corvette is that it's not very good in cold temperatures, and it doesn't like really bumpy circuits. Silverstone's very flat, very smooth, so it should suit Silverstone quite well. But obviously the bumpier tracks we've had prior to this, especially Snetterton, the Corvette's just doesn't love that kind of circuit. So Silverstone will definitely be a better track for the Corvette. I don't particularly love Silverstone myself. I'm not great at it as a driver. I've never really had a good record at Silverstone, but it will definitely be a solid race. Hopefully next time out I should be able to fight at the front again.
All right, we look forward to seeing you there. For now, Aidan, congratulations on the win tonight, and thanks for chatting to us after the race.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Thanks very much. Aidan Carter there, the winner in the overall standings tonight, ahead of Adam Watson, who could also join us now. Congratulations, Adam, on another podium at least, but for the first time this season, you're not on the top step. Tell us your thoughts and feelings after this race.
No, fair play to Aidan. I had nothing on him. That Corvette was really fast, and the Porsche wasn't the right package for this track, and I struggled. I got to slow down when I was battling him, and it just set the course, because then I couldn't keep up. I couldn't stay in the slipstream of him. So it's no. Aidan did a really good job and did fully deserved to win. As soon as it got to a point where I couldn't catch him, it was okay. Just keep within 10 seconds in case, because he was very aggressive in traffic. So I thought if he has an instant or anything and gets a penalty, then just keep a distance. So if something does happen, then I can pick up something.
I'll pose the same question to you about the Porsche that I did to Aidan about the Corvette. Would you put Silverstone in a similar category to Spa, in a sense of it's a Grand Prix circuit in this 5-race calendar that is mainly traditional British circuits that maybe do suit the Porsche? Is Silverstone going to be tricky for the Porsche as well, in much the same way as here, or do you think you'll get away with it next week?
No, I should get away with it next week. The Porsche should work around there. It's worked in other series, but there isn't that many long straights at Silverstone. It's all medium speed and slow speed corners, so where the Porsche would work, whereas Spa is obviously there's 3 miles of long straights, and this thing doesn't really like that. So Silverstone should be fine. I hope to see some rain. Be nice, because then Porsche would definitely work, but we'll see.
All right, we will see. Congratulations on finishing second tonight, and an extended championship lead, and thanks for coming to chat to us at the end as well.
Cheers, thank you guys.
Thanks very much, Adam Watson there in the second place overall tonight. Let's go down to GT3 AM and Ricky Pittman now, who was just about hung on for the race victory and a very exciting finish to the race. Ricky, congratulations on that victory. It was, as I say, exciting for us to watch. I'd imagine nerve-wracking for you to be a part of. Tell us your thoughts having hung on for the win at the end of that race.
Yeah, it was a great race there. It was very close at the end, especially starting P16 overall and finishing P5. I was very happy with that, so yeah.
And it puts you in a decent position championship-wise now as well. Not sure exactly on the maths. I think it's certainly single figures between yourself and Sikorsky, who is still the championship leader. Is that an aim for you in the final 2 rounds of this season?
I mean, I'd love it to happen, but I hope, but I feel like this might just be a one-off, but I'm just going to try in Silverstone and see with brands. So, yeah.
We will see. Well, congratulations on the win here tonight at Spa, and we look forward to seeing you next week at Silverstone.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks very much. Ricky Pittman there in first place in GT3 AM, ahead of Franisek Sikorsky, who also joins us now. Franisek, congratulations on second. But I have a feeling you might be a little bit disappointed, though, with the outcome in that race eventually. You were leading at one stage, had a spin through the bus stop, and very nearly earned the lead back again. Are you disappointed to have missed out on the win here tonight?
I'm extremely disappointed, to be honest. For a good hour, I was sitting not even 10 seconds behind Aidan Carter and Adam Watson. And to be honest, I thought that I had the win in hand. Unfortunately, there was the first mistake in the bus stop where a GT4 went into the pits, and I wasn't really expecting that, and made myself spin. Then just after pitting at the end of Camo Straight, got contact with another guy and made myself spin again. And to be honest, what felt like easy win today feels us pretty big disappointment.
Well, I mean, you still got the championship lead to be pleased about, I suppose. Although it is slightly smaller over Ricky Pittman this time, rather than over Oliver Ettridge. How confident are you that you're going to be able to hold on to the championship lead all the way to the end of the season in 2 weeks?
I'm indeed a step closer into sealing the title, but we still got 2 rounds to go. First, Silverstone, a track also with some overtaking opportunities, and for the season finale we've got Brands Hatch, where in qualifying track position will be extremely vital, because I don't see really any overtakes happening there, as it is not a wide track, and smallest of mistakes might really cost you.
Absolutely. Well, we'll look forward to that in Silverstone next week, of course, and Brands Hatch 2 weeks away. But congratulations for now, František, on another podium place finish tonight, and we'll see you next week at Silverstone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, František Sikorski there in second place here tonight at Spa. Let's go down to GT4s now, where the race leaders and winners, unfortunately, are not waiting for us. But third placed in GT4 Pro, Ned Wharton is waiting for us after a good run tonight. Ned, congratulations on a podium in GT4 Pro in your first race of the season as well. Were you surprised, by the way, you were able to come in straight away this season and hit the ground running so well?
I was a bit surprised. I didn't expect to get a podium. I was going for a finish at the best, but the podium was it was a surprise, but a welcome surprise.
Absolutely, a welcome surprise. I mean, how was your race generally in terms of exceeding your expectations, as you've already said, because you were running up with the front guys for the entire first hour?
I mean, yeah, as you say, the first hour, it was about 4 or 5 of us all in a train the whole time. I was thinking, I don't know what's going on here. Am I just burning too much fuel, or what's going on? But then when some of them started to come in early, I was quite surprised, and I managed to jump one of them in the pits. I missed my pit box, which wasn't great, but apart from that, the pit moments, pit stops went quite well for me.
Yeah, well, these things happen, I suppose, but a great way to get your season off to even if it's a late start, then a good start nevertheless. Congratulations on finishing on the podium tonight.
Thank
and
you.
Hopefully we'll see you next week.
Yeah, hopefully. All right.
Ned Wharton, the third place here at Spa here in GT4 Pro today. Now GT4 Am, where again we haven't got the race winner unfortunately, but we have got second placed Luca Monroe joining us as well. Luca, congratulations on a great run here tonight in GT4 Am. Second place, your first podium of the season, and first top 2 of the season as well, in some pretty big battles throughout the day as well. Tell us a little bit about your race and how you're feeling to have gotten on the podium at the end.
Hello, Ewan and Dara. It's great to be back here, Dara, after September. But after that race was, I really worked for that. There was so many battles in there that at one point Ethan Maroney was behind me, and he tried to do that thing where he stuck behind me even right into the braking zone, thinking that I would jolt back onto the racing line and he could pass me, and I did not relent. I was like, you're not gonna get me, I'm not a sucker. That whole performance, oh man, it feels really rectifying having this result after I was fighting for the podium in Donington, and got unfortunately taken out by a wayward GT3. But a 4th and a 2nd. I think I'm doing a lot better than I thought I would after the start of the season.
Exactly, it's a good couple of results for yourself. Now, what about Silverstone coming up in 1 week's time? Is it a circuit you're expecting to go well at for the penultimate round?
Well, considering I know you had a go at me when we did that one-off Le Mans Ultimate event for bragging about my championship, but considering I won I did very well at Silverstone last time I raced there in an MSUK Esports event. I I think I can do well. It depends on the setup, really. There's very few suitable setups available from providers for GT4 cars. But providing I get a good one, I reckon I can get a podium, if not better than that. Yeah.
We're only lightly pulling your leg. We'd do the same.
Yeah.
So there we go. Congratulations anyway, Luca, on finishing second place here tonight. And we'll see you next week at Silverstone.
See you next week. Bye.
Thanks very much. Luca Munro, second place here at Spa in GT4 AM today. As I've said, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to speak to the GT4 class winners, but tonight, those, of course, going to Daniel Thomas and Joe Coffin, both involved in championship battles. Next week, Darragh will be at Silverstone. It's going to feel a little bit similar. That's the vibe I'm picking up a little bit from the drivers as well, that there are many differences between Spa and Silverstone, but in terms of their machinery and how the race might unfold, it could be a similar event in 1 week's time.
Yeah, and when you consider that the other three races have been Donington Park, Snetterton, and we will go to Brands Hatch, I mean, the disparity between those three and then Spa and Silverstone are huge. So if there's any similarities to draw from what we've seen tonight into next week, it's that it's likely to be the two tracks that are, the fastest, the widest, that we like to see the most similar racing at, which is going to be incredibly exciting to see. Not long to wait for it as well. Looking forward to it in 7 days' time.
Absolutely. We will be live, same time, same place, 7:30 UK time. Don't forget, we are going an hour later at the moment in America, but that will change for the final round, just to keep you all confused and on your toes on a Tuesday afternoon. It's been myself, Ian O'Leary, and Darragh Thacker with you here this afternoon for this Motorsport UK Esports GT Challenge round here at Spa-Francorchamps, with Hugo Louise behind the production of this RaceSpotTV broadcast here tonight. We'll be back, as we say, in 7 days' time from 7:30 UK time for the qualifying session, and then another hour and a half race from the home of British Motorsport, Silverstone. Very much hope to see you then, but for now, it's goodbye from Spa.